All right, what's going on? Welcome aboard to another episode of the PG podcast. So today's episode, we got my man Ryan again, Sapstead, big coach in the UK, and we're back for another episode, another roundtable, just chopping it up, having a good time, and going over some important topics. So the theme of today's episode is we're not talking about anything else besides nutrition. It's really important because I feel like a lot of people talk so much about the training, and I think training is very important. And truth be told, a lot of individuals who watch YouTube Fitness, they watch a lot of training videos. And I feel like if you're trying to get the most muscular development possible, a lot of like the videos you're missing, that you're not watching, is like the full day of eating. Once I really started watching more full day of eating of like, you know, lifters I really respect, whether enhanced or not, but especially like more on the natural side, especially, it really started opening a lot more doors to me, and I really started to understand what more other factors go into the whole process. If you really want to be dedicated to the process, it's not just having fun in the gym, because the gym could be fun, but then it's like when it comes down to really getting the meals down, especially if you don't have a huge appetite, this stuff tends to be a bit more annoying, but it still has to get done nonetheless. Like, I don't like cooking more than anybody else. I actually don't even like it at all, but I know it's part of the process, get it done. And I know a lot of people are in a similar boat. So I brought Ryan on board. We got tons of questions we're going to go over, and we're just going to hammer it out, man. So how you feeling today?
Yeah, good, brother. Yeah, it's nice to be back on again. I think after last time's conversation, it was we had some good feedback. So I'm looking forward to getting to more the nutrition side. And yeah, let's get to it, man.
Yep. So oftentimes I've heard this expression, it's 80-20, man. It's 80% of it's nutrition, 20%. I always call BS on that, because it's like, first of all, I've seen people who eat very well who don't look jacked at all, right?
Yeah.
They might be at a good body fat percentage, but at the same time, if you're training like, you know, right before the Q&A, I just thought, if you want to look like a monster, but you're eating like a bird, or you're eating like a pig, both aren't going to work. The bird's eating crumbs, there's no appetite, and the pig just eating, like, I call them like junk food bodybuilders, where they'll go to the gym, and right on the way back home, they're at the drive-thru at like Mickey D's, and like, that's not the way either. You know, you want to be, it has to be, you know, most of it like minimally processed foods. And I like to say 100% nutrition, 100% training, 100% lifestyle factors, you know, stress management, rest, all that type of stuff. It's like you're planting a garden, you want everything to be planted in the right places. And it's a big pet peeve of mine. But at the same time, people like to put numbers on it, you know, like 80-20. I think it's all very important, man. So let's dive into like your nutrition first of all. Like, give us like a quick rundown, and this is like a blitz Q&A, by the way, of what's your current nutrition like? Because from the last episode, people for sure they checked out your IG. They could clearly see your physique, clearly see how much muscular development you have. But give us like, for example, basics as far as what phase you're in. Are you bulking? Are you cutting? Or are you doing something in the middle, or you're like more into maintenance? How many meals you're eating per day? And what's your total protein intake like right now?
Okay, cool. So at the moment, I'm kind of off the back end. I kind of had a bit of a holiday for my 30th, and I wanted to be in decent shape when we were kind of training at Muscle Beach and all of that kind of shit. So I kind of went through a recomp phase, and for me, that tidy up was really, really productive. Strength, if anything, got better. Overall performance, the way that I was improving on all my lifts got better, just based on the fact that I was fueling a race car on racing fuel. I wasn't fueling a racing car on diesel, if that makes sense. And I think that's one thing to just tap into a little bit, is that, like you said, a lot of people out there are just, they'll train, they'll go to the drive-through, they'll kind of hit that, and they'll go and hit McDonald's afterwards, or whatever their favorite fast food chain is. And, you know, it's the fact that calories are king, but that's taken into a whole new level. It's almost taken it to an unnecessary level. So, you know, I find the cleaner the foods that I consume, obviously the better that I'm going to perform, but equally so, I'm a very flexible dieter. I mean, I go through phases where I'm going through a phase at the moment where I'm just trying to add a little bit of mass. So I'm kind of sitting at about 3,500 calories a day, slightly above what my maintenance would be at about 3,200 from what I can kind of calculate at the moment, based on weighing in quite often and stuff like that. So, you know, 3,500 calories, quite a bit of that is protein. However, generally speaking, I lean towards a slightly higher protein intake than your average person. So, even though you could say from a research standpoint, if you're kind of going on more of a a mass gaining phase, you don't need your protein to be quite as high as obviously if you're in a deficit. But I tend to lean towards about probably a little bit over 1 gram per pound of body weight, as it were, maybe
Right.
1.2 at a push, dependent on the kind of day. So, unfortunately, it's kind of got to that point where I rely upon an extra protein shake every day, as opposed to getting everything through meat and all my kind of normal food sources. But it's not as much as it would be if as the protein would be as if I'm in a deficit. But yeah, generally speaking, like, diet's going well. I eat 3 meals a day plus snacks. I'm a very snacky person. That's just the way that my lifestyle allows it. So generally speaking, 3 pretty large meals a day. I would say probably around between 700 and 900 calories each. And then the rest is just kind of filled throughout the day with snacks. I tend to have quite a I don't know how it is over in Canada, but I'm kind of like in the UK, where a lot of us are kind of molded when we grow up. We've got this whole, like, you have your dinner and then you have your dessert. And it's always a thing. So I'll always have a pretty big dessert after dinner. I always like to make room for that in my calories without kind of overshooting or any of that. So dessert almost ends up being an extra meal. So you could say 4 larger meals with snacks, but it works out pretty well. I mean, digestion's fine and things like that, and training's going really productively, and I'm not gaining, I'm not overshooting and gaining too much mass, which is the main concern, especially because in the past I've had a lot of experiences with, competing and getting towards a competition prep, and I've got too much weight to lose in too little time, basically. So things are productive at the moment, probably the most productive they would be, I would say.
No, it's really good to hear, man. But you raised an important point with the protein, and that brings me on to my next point. You hear so many different arguments about it, and that's why, this is why people hire a coach, because there's just so much information online, and they just don't even know what to believe at this point. And there's so many studies that contradict other studies, and we don't even know how credible some of these studies even are. And some of these studies aren't even, truth be told, aren't even for lifters either. So it's like, or they're for the pure novice, not someone who's been lifting for a long time. But anyways, there's so many factors to come into play when you address certain studies. But you're another example of someone, who's in a surplus, who's getting slightly over 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And that's basically what I've been talking about for a long time. If you want to cut down, get the protein a bit higher, you want to try to reserve as much muscle as possible. But obviously, if you're trying to get 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight and you're bulking up, it's a lot, for a lot of people. Some people still do it. But what I tend to see is 1 to 1.5 tends to be the little range. But what's your argument for people who say that it's all a scam, it's BS, because this is protein powder supplement companies trying to sell more and make more money off of lifters, because it's a $1 billion industry, and they're basically citing certain studies to basically just pimp out their supplements. What's your thoughts on that?
It's a tough one, because as we know by now, a lot of studies are funded by different industries, dependent on what the study is. There can be biases, there can be there can be studies that were done that were completely unbiased, and it's hard to pick apart a lot of that information. But what I can say is that protein intake is, it should be a range. It should not be, you can look at the research and say, okay, well, people should have X amount per kilo or pound of body weight, let's say. But one thing that I find is the most important thing is that you should listen to your body with regards to how it's digesting that protein. Can you handle that much? What is best for you? We can use ranges to dictate where we should actually put people and put our clients and have ourselves. But I think it's important to, and I say it a lot with pretty much everything, and research is to be taken with a pinch of salt. You've got to take that knowledge and then, open your mind up to that knowledge, but equally so, you've got to be careful with the application and how you do it, because none of us can really confirm whether these are things that are made up by industry giants, and these are it's ultimately we've got a point at the research where it's as unbiased as possible, but we've got to almost use that and take it with a pinch of salt, apply it to ourselves, apply it to our clients, and then just find what works. We can taper it here and there. If something says you should have, you should be at 1 gram per pound of body weight when it comes to being at a deficit or being at your maintenance or whatever, I think we should just kind of take things as a range instead. I have clients that are, and over here we kind of generally use gram per kilo as opposed to gram per pound. So metric imperial. But I've got clients that when they're in a deficit, they're absolutely fine, and they struggle to get their protein in when it comes to being 1.8 grams per kilo of body weight, which doesn't actually kind of seem too much. I mean, if you think 2.2 grams per kilo, well, 2.2 kilos is obviously 1 pound. 2.2 pounds, is 1 kilo. So if you think 1 pound per 1 gram per pound of body weight is going to be, I've completely got that wrong. So 1 gram per pound is going to be 2.2 grams per kilo. I've got clients that are having 2.2 grams per kilo and they're struggling to hit that protein target. I've got other clients where it suits their lifestyle to have 2.4, 2.6 grams per kilo when they're in deficits. I've got other clients that struggle to get 1.8 grams per kilo of body weight. It's dependent on the individual's lifestyle as well. I think the main thing with that is that you've got to just take things with a pinch of salt and apply them yourself to be able to find what works for people, because it's not necessarily what works with regards to how much muscle mass that they're gaining or how much strength they're gaining, whatever. A lot of it's to do with digestion. Can they digest it first and foremost? If they can, are they seeing the benefit from it? If they can digest it and they can increase, then fine. If they don't physically have the appetite and the capacity to increase, then it's not worth it. You need to kind of stay a little bit lower. But I think there's a threshold you can stay between that you can safely know that there will be a result from it. But you've got to kind of find that threshold, and you've got to be within that threshold, as opposed to, okay, 2 grams per kilo of body weight's not working, we'll try 2.2. It's too accurate. You just need to have a window. I think it's the same with calories. You just need to have a window as opposed to being on the money, because the research will never point towards an exact number. It will always point towards a range.
Right. You tend to see certain patterns, of what works and what doesn't. And I find people when their protein is just lower, like when it's under like a gram, it's not the same, And there's always that thought in the back of your head that like maybe it would be better, like might as well just be there,
Oh yeah. And I mean, like, we could talk from.
It's not even hard to get that either for most people.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we could talk from a bodybuilding standpoint. I know, like, when you get to a certain body fat percentage, and the muscle starts to shine through, you kind of feel a little bit leaner and stuff like that. If you are on, let's say, the difference between 1.8 grams per kilo of body weight and, okay, well, or let's talk in pounds. So the difference between 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein and 1.3, 1.4 grams per pound of body weight in protein, that will reflect on your physique 100%. With you as an individual, you will notice that you will feel harder on that slight increase, but it will also give you a substantially harder look. And that's what I've found with myself, with my clients. But that's not to say, and that's very bro sciencey, and that's not to say that there is any research that backs that, but that's something that you notice as a coach, that you can achieve a harder look with an increase in protein. You could go into detail about the thermic effect of food. Protein is obviously going to take more to digest, and is going to burn more calories per gram of protein than digesting a gram of carbs, and so on and so forth. But you can go into TEF all day long, but ultimately the result that comes from it, a higher protein intake will almost always lead to a better physique and a better result than a lower protein intake.
Yeah, big time. Let's transition, while we're on this topic, to bulking, man. For some circles, it's a controversial topic. right? But I've been, as long as I've been on this channel, I've always preached bulking. I think it's very important. And by bulking, I mean clean bulking. I'm not talking like being a junk food bodybuilder, going to drive-throughs after sessions, like just to fill up the calories. And just to be on the same page, like, yes, I'm aware from one of my last episodes, like when I was 232, some of that was coming from like, it was not just broccoli and rice and like chicken to get to 230, it was like some pecan pie, stuff like that to fill up the gap somehow, which obviously helps you in more of a surplus, But anyways, with that being said, just like how in last episode, and some of this is bro science too, but you go by real world experience as well. But just like how last episode I was saying that the widest and the thickest guys I know and gals, they tend to do barbell rows. The people I know, naturals, who are the biggest, have had a lot of bulks. And not these shallow bulks where they're like, okay, if we're talking about Gen Pop, we're not talking about like people who go on stage, but like I know in as far as people who are on stage though, some of these guys talk about how they're 50 pounds over their stage weight in the off season, Some even higher than that, and they say that's when they have like their best pushes. They put on the most amount of muscle, and then they slowly start to taper down as competition comes. And some coaches, when they see that, for example, the lifter who wants to compete does not have as much muscle, doesn't have the package, some coach will even tell the guy, look, or the gal, you're not going to compete this year, man. You're going to be in off season for like 2 years. You just don't have what it takes. Even if you bulk up this year, it's just not enough. 2 years. Some probably even tell them 3 for anything, but like that in itself should already say something, because there's not many options, man. Like you could cut, but what do you cut? Are you trying to chisel a pebble? Like you're some people, they just want to be lean all the time, they want the skull face, they want the abs, but it's like you don't have anything yet. And it's like if you maintain, aka gaintaining, like they say on YouTube, it's slow too, man. How are you gonna? I always say, if your arm is 12 inches, how are you gonna get it to 14 and then eventually 16 inches by maintaining weight?
Yeah. So if your calories are at maintenance, what extra are you getting in? What's gonna do the building if you're just taking in enough to maintain? There might be a little bit of recomp here and there. Depends if you clean things up a little bit. Might be a little bit of recomposition, might be a little bit of tissue gain, but not visible. It's not going to grow you a substantial amount. I think that's the issue. And with a lot of guys I know, and again, it's like we spoke about, there are always 2 extremes. You get the guys that are like, okay, we need to we want minimal fat gain and we're gonna gaintain. And then you get the guys at the opposite side of the spectrum that are like not quite dirty bulk, but they're adamant that they've got to gain 40-50 pounds between in their off season. If they're in an off season for like 2-3 years, they've got to gain 50 pounds and they've got to be substantially heavier and they've got to have a substantial amount of increase of calories. But I mean, and exactly like the same with the training element. It's the same that we spoke about the optimal crowd and the suboptimal crowd, whatever. But it's almost, you have to be somewhere in the middle. The main indicators when it comes to your training is your performance remaining high? You may find that you get to a certain weight where it's actually uncomfortable to perform. You may find you have digestive stress. You may find you lose your appetite. You have to keep an eye on these markers. So in reality, my kind of thoughts on the whole bulking process is you can be as extreme as you want, but as an individual, you'll come to a time where you have gained so much fat mass or you're getting so much food in that you've got a lot of digestive stress, of which you would then need to dial back, maybe look at a little bit of a diet break or like a mini cut, whatever, just to bring that hunger back, because again, that's one of the first things to go. But also you may find you get to a point where certain lifts are just hitting a plateau because your performance is not as high as, I always think that there's a sweet spot with regards to a maintainable level of body fat while being in a surplus. And I'm not talking sub 12%, but I'm also starting to kind of realize, and especially with some of my clients and myself, that when I get past 18, 20% body fat, my performance starts to flag quite a lot. And my energy levels aren't as clean, and they're not as instant, and they're not the same as when I'm 15, 16% body fat. And again, that's a very individual approach, and you need to find where that's, again, it's a threshold. So you need to find that threshold for each individual where they perform the best. They're able to consistently increase their calories over time, and this could be every 3-4 weeks we're adding a little bit extra just to kind of keep you at that point. And the main thing is that you're not overshooting your weight gain. In reality, if you're gaining more than, I believe it's around 1% of your body weight per 1 to 2% of your body weight per month, the likeliness is, as a natural, that's not going to be muscle. That the majority of that is going to be fat. And if you're overshooting, unless you're post show and you've got to allow a little bit of fat gain, you might gain 15 pounds within the first week post show. That's just how it is. Your body wants that fat. It needs to kind of draw it back in. But anything after that, if you're kind of in a mass gaining phase and you're gaining more than that amount every month, if it's a couple of kilos, if you're gaining a kilo a week, that's not ideal. You're not going to put yourself in a great situation. You think you're gaining muscle, you may gain a bit of strength relative to not necessarily relative to your body weight, but you may be gaining a bit of strength based on the fact that mechanically you've got a bit more fat around your midsection. That might help you come up in a squat. You've got a little bit of fat around your thighs. That's going to help you when it comes to deadlifts, squats, and so on and so forth. So mechanically, you may get stronger. Doesn't mean you're gaining any lean tissue. That comes after. You may feel like you're getting stronger every week, but in reality, the amount of lean tissue gained is not, the majority of that strength is not accurate, if that makes sense. So I think the main thing is you've just got to find that threshold where you perform the best and kind of almost try and gain an appropriate amount of total body weight gradually over time from there. I see guys that gain 20, 30 pounds within the space of a couple of months, and it reflects on their physique. They don't look great, which obviously is not the goal. Who cares? Whatever. But their performance isn't going up as well as it could if they were a little bit more meticulous with their nutrition. They're a little bit too careless, because the goal is we want a dirty bulk. We want to gain as much weight as possible. And I think it's just, you've just got to keep it under control and don't let it get out of hand. And that's what a lot of people tend to do.
No, it's because you are what you eat, to a certain extent. And if you're eating if you're eating food that's not going to help with your performance, like for example, if you eat like sweet potatoes, man, if I eat sweet potatoes, tons of energy. That energy is going to transfer over to better sessions, more output in the gym, better recovery, all these factors that are going to play into my favor. And I like what you said about like everybody has a personal profile, like a point with body fat where they feel the best. And if maybe you have a coach who's doing this with you, or maybe you just have your own personal journal, you have like little check boxes, okay, how's my energies levels for the day? If my energy levels drop, when does it happen? How's my sex drive? You look at all these factors, and week after week, you're just monitoring it, Yeah. And if you notice, for example, that, oh, well, I can speak for myself, right? Like, I tend to feel like this is not even negotiable for me. Like the high teens, that's where I feel best. 100%. I agree with you. Once I start passing, like, once you get high in the low 20s, like, I could probably do 21, but like 25, like, nah, that's not it, man. Like, yeah. But like, I would say, like, if I'm like 17, 18%, a real 17, 18, I think I'm at the top of my game, But at the same time, I know guys who are like, they feel like they're at the top of their game at like 13. But then again, some of those guys, they've never actually been up to like close to 20, so that they can never even know anyways. So 100. I feel like you have to go around the block a couple times to really figure out where do I perform best. But I find it very funny because I have some people contacting me, whether it's like people in my entourage or just DMs, whatever the case is, but more people who are close to me who say, man, like, and I'm not even 30 years old yet, right? So I have some people who are like, they're telling me how like they're 29 years old and they just feel like, the energy is just not there. I'm like, man, you're supposed to be at the top of your game. And like, I would say, for example, as a man, I can't speak for everybody, but from what I'm observing, it seems like the sweet spot, man, where it's like you're peaked out is like 34, 35. Like that's when you have like a lot of gym experience. You've made all the mistakes in your 20s. Your nutrition's most likely pretty dialed in by that point. Had a good 15 years to mess it up. And now it's like you have good training age, but not too much, you know? And you're telling me that you're 29 years old or you're 30 years old and you're just tired all the time and you have no kids, no, like none of these extra stresses, you know? Not say, you know, whatever, but so it's because the nutrition's off and like they haven't found that sweet spot, the sweet body fat spot.
Yeah. And it's because they've not spent the time trying to find it. And don't get me wrong, it sounds really overcomplicated from what we're kind of saying, and it's, you know, writing things down. But all it is, it can be as simple as just looking at markers. Okay, if you keep in mind not even necessarily the body fat, the body fat percentage that you are at, but the weight that you're at. Okay, just kind of write some things down, or even make some mental notes of, okay, how's my sleep? How is my performance in the gym? Is my strength increasing? How is my digestion? Things like that. And then again, fatigue, recovery, and so on and so forth. But all it takes is just to consider those factors, because a lot of people will go, oh, fuck, I'm really tired this week. But they won't think about why. They will just blame everything else but their nutrition. And it's the low-hanging fruit in that situation, is that ultimately the first thing to do is, and it sounds really bad, I do it with everyone. It's like, first thing we say is like, are you hydrated enough? Yes or no? Yeah. Okay. Well, what's been happening with regards to nutrition? Everyone goes straight to the, I'm stressed out from work. And it's like, yeah, that can be a factor, but ultimately you're stressed out from work, which means you're likely to end up snacking or putting things into your body that are going to give you not so clean forms of energy, which are then going to reflect on everything else. And it's a vicious cycle when it comes to your sleep, stress, diet, hydration, everything. It all merges into one big cycle, because, you know, the likeliness is, if you, let's say you get home, you've had a stressful day at work, regardless of whether your training session's been good or bad. You go to work, let's say you train in the morning, you go to work, you've had a full day at work. From that full day of work, it's been super stressful. You go home, you either eat or you grab a beer, whatever you want to do. Your alcohol content comes into play, or you put some pretty bad food in your system that's either super high in sodium, or, you know, it's just kind of junk food and it's got a lot of additives, whatever. That's then going to reflect on the way that you sleep, which is then going to reflect on the way that you recover. In the morning, you're going to wake up feeling like shit. Then you've got to go and train again. And it turns into that cycle, and people don't really know. And sometimes it could be as simple as the fact that you're just having a couple too many beers in the evening, and you don't know why your training's bad. And it's because you're going to bed and you're dehydrated, and you're going to sleep like shit. You're going to wake up dehydrated, and then you're going to take a pre-workout that's full of caffeine. Then you're going to train. It might feel half decent to train, but then you're going to crash, and then work becomes stressful. And that whole cycle starts again and again and again. And it all comes down to what you're putting in your body in the first place.
Yeah, I've seen it happen tons of times. And even to take that cycle further, people, they'll have a crappy session, or let's say they'll be late to a session, or they have to rush a session, they can only do half of it. And they'll be like, oh, I can only do half of it. But they never think to themselves, what led to this happening? And like what you said, maybe the girlfriend, like, argument, or the extra stresses. Like, there's tons of different factors that come in. Maybe they slept 5-6 hours, you rush to the gym, but then what happens from there? You have a crappy session, and now that's gonna haunt you for the rest of the day, because you're like, man, I don't feel like I'm on my A game, you know?
Yeah.
At this crappy session, I'm building less muscle. Next thing you know, you're probably gonna try to go do the same session tomorrow in the gym again. It's not gonna go well because you already exerted force from the last session, and now it's like you're behind on your schedule. And now it's like you have to. Now it's like the last training session of your day is like on a Sunday, but then you have to train on the Monday. You know what I'm saying? So people lack structure, and I feel like that comes from people just putting too much into their days.
Yeah.
And then they try to bite more than they could chew, like the expression says. I was gonna mention something important. Yeah, regarding like the not to plug in my coaching, right? But basically, especially with the online people, where I'm trying to collect extra data, got the training plan, got the nutrition plan, got the weekly check-in. With the weekly check-in, you basically have certain boxes you have to check off, and some of it literally takes you like not even more than 5 minutes. You know, take the video of the physique, front, back, side, do it with flexing, send it over on the WhatsApp. You don't even have to look at it. And as far as like the questions are concerned, you could literally just write a number out of 10. Digestion, yeah, it's 10 out of 10.
Yes.
Sleep, yeah, it's this. Anyways, for people who are extra serious, there's actually a daily log where you could write like what time you went to bed at. People say, for example, my sleep is no good, and like they're like, yeah, I sleep 8 hours, but it's like if you actually log your sleep, like you write down exactly what time you're going to bed at without your phone, and then you write down, for example, what time you wake up at, you'd be really surprised to see how most people are sleeping 6 hours.
Yeah.
And that, anyways, but what I'm trying to say, I know I'm kind of getting carried away, is that people, they want to do the training plan. Some people want to do the nutrition if we're lucky. But then when it comes to a weekly log, that takes you literally 5 minutes to write down your week.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah.
But it's like, buddy, not buddy, but this is about you, you know? I'm trying to help you transform your physique, and this only has to do with you. But then some people, they'll be so, there's so much friction and they're so hesitant to do it, but they'll gladly go on socials and spend like half an hour looking at their favorite influencer's page.
Yeah.
What's he wearing? Like, what's all these factors that don't even matter or whatever. But that influencer doesn't care about you. Whereas like a weekly check-in, this is 100% for you. You know, I know I sound repetitive, but like people have to start monitoring this stuff a bit better.
Yeah, and they need that
everything's going to transform
yeah.
from there.
That's it for sure. And I think it's one thing that I kind of notice. Yeah, I get all my clients to track their nutrition, and whether it's via MyFitnessPal, MacroFactor, whatever they want to use, as long as they're tracking their nutrition, all I say is like, look, it takes 5 minutes. If you track your day, even if it's tracking the next day, you don't have to meal prep for the whole week or anything like that. If you want to, then awesome, fucking best case scenario. But even if you can spend 5 minutes the night before tracking what you're going to have the next day, it keeps you accountable because you know what you're going to have the next day. And it's things like that. You'll find if people, it's the whole, you know, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. It's at the end of the day, if you're not willing to take a couple of minutes at the end of your day when you are sat on the sofa scrolling Instagram, you know, kind of just watching shitty reels and memes and stuff like that, literally take 2 minutes. Just go, okay, what am I going to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner tomorrow? Don't think about your snacks. Think about breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Plan it out roughly. It might already be prepared, but you know, or you might have to pick up the ingredients, whatever. But if you have that kind of small level of logging what you're eating ready for the next day, you're more likely to stay on plan. I mean, statistically, you're probably something like 80 or 90% more likely to stay on plan if you track the day before. You know, I'm just talking out my ass with that. I can't really, you know, come up with an actual statistic, but that's just the way it is. If you've got that written down, writing things down gives you another level of accountability. And it's like you said, checking in on a weekly basis, whether it's even with yourself or a coach, it's great, but it's being in control of those variables. And that's the main thing, is that the more variables you're in control of, and I don't get all my clients to track, you know, ideally I'm like, it's great if we can track your steps, if we can track your nutrition, amazing. Training's the easy one, that's the no-brainer, because that's the main thing that we're tracking. But anything outside of that, the more variables that you're in control of, the more in control of your own progress you are. And that's just the way it is.
And the reason I'm laughing, man, is I think some people don't want to control the variables because they know they're crap.
Oh yeah, 100%.
They know the variables are they know they didn't sleep well. They know the training was not ideal at all. They know everything's pretty much crap. So like, I don't even want to see it. I don't even want to go to the bathroom where no one's looking and just take a physique 360 because they know that like they feel guilty, you know?
Yeah. And I say to people, like, when they start working with me, I'm like, look, take a progress picture. You don't have to upload it, because the likely, I mean, 9 times out of 10, they end up uploading it in the future anyway, because they see the result and they go, oh shit, actually, like, this is crazy, the difference. They actually want to show how they looked before. But I'm like, look, take a picture. Don't upload it. Don't even look at it yourself. Get your partner to take a picture, like get your wife, whatever, and get them to keep it, because you're going to regret not taking that picture when it comes to the future. Or if you haven't taken that picture, you're not even going to realize the progress that you've made, and you're still going to feel demotivated, even though I can give you so many other indications and factors, and, you know, I can give you so much social proof that you have gained progress. But until you see that picture, if you've not got that first picture, you've got nothing to compare your future self to either.
Yeah, that's why I tell all clients, like, you don't even have to look at the video. Literally just send it in WhatsApp.
Yeah.
I'll look at it.
Yeah, that's it.
You want to like, it would be nice if you look at it, but let's just say if that's the determining factor of you sending it or not, if it takes for you not to look at it, cool. At least I'll have access to it, and we'll share it later on, you know?
Yeah, because otherwise,
right, okay, so
only for.
Here you go.
That's it.
So one of my pet peeves, man, like I want to stay on this bulking thing, right? You have certain influencers, right? And who are jacked out of their minds, and they have a big training age, maybe like they've been for 15 years, and they've gone through bulks, man. They've gone through yearly, some bulks in 2 years, big stretches, and they'll come on screen. They'll come on screen 15 years later, jacked out of their minds, and they're like, you know what, man, like the bulking, like it was just so excessive, man, and it's just not necessary, man. So it's like, okay, well, so what? We're supposed to maintain? Like, you're huge now, and like you're gonna discredit the bulks. And I understand it as a natural. I don't want to put ceilings on anybody, but maybe after a certain point, I can understand that maybe it will start to get a little slower, because you can only put on. But I don't want to put a ceiling on someone, you know, because now in the next episode when we talk about the naturals, like there's naturals popping out of everywhere who are just massive, you know, and so I'm not putting ceilings on anybody, you know. Who knows at this point what we could put on naturally, you know, with the information we have and like anyways. So I'm never gonna try to do that to someone. But at the same time, some of these influencers, they'll downplay it and they'll be like, you know, like it just wasn't worth it. Like maybe it's not worth it for you right now as like a 35-year-old guy, but like you definitely did something right, man, to look like that naturally.
That's it.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of it is that it may be down to there's a lack of acknowledgement that they've actually, you know, of how much they've done themselves to get where they were. Because they may be like, oh yeah, I did this like crazy bulk, I put on so much fat mass, and when they've cut back down, they don't actually realize that they've gained a lot of progress. Or it's been so gradual over time, they've been doing it so long that ultimately it just kind of, it's never dawned on them what they did to get where they are, other than consistent training for X amount of time. It's not dawned on them that they've gone through X amount of bulking phases, X amount of dieting phases, and so on and so forth. So, you know, I find, especially with myself, I kind of fall a little bit down that rabbit hole in the sense of I've kind of done bulks in the past where I feel like I've gained too much overall body mass, but they do reflect on your physique when you cut back down. The only issue that I've ever had is that if I'm cutting back down for competition, I've realized that I've not left myself enough time to take off everything that I've gained in relation to the body fat, which means I then have to slightly rush to get down to stage condition or near stage condition, which then puts that muscle mass at risk again. So especially as a natural, the main thing is that you need, the biggest factor in anything as a natural is time. Because if you've not left yourself an appropriate amount of time to gain any muscle mass, or let's say you go after let's say you've done a dieting phase and your hormones are a little bit not at optimal ranges or kind of not at normal ranges, you need enough time to allow yourself to gain size and mass at an appropriate rate to then increase your performance, increase your strength, increase your muscle mass, before then leaving enough time for you to cut back down again. If you rush either process, you're going to gain body fat too fast. You're going to be in a pretty sticky situation when it comes to coming back down. And then on the way back down, if you don't leave yourself enough time, you're putting that lean tissue that you've spent so much hard effort and time building, you're going to put that in jeopardy of being lost again because you've got to diet down too fast. And that's the important thing natural. With being natural is that we don't have the PEDs, the anabolics to maintain or even gain muscle mass when we are in a deficit. We got to hold on to what we got. There may be a little bit of a recomp effect part of the way into the diet where you think, okay, protein's increased. Strength continues to increase for a very short period. Strength in relation to body weight could go up when it comes to, suddenly you've lost 3-4 kilos of fat mass and you're really sick at pull-ups, which is awesome. I love that stage because you find lose a little bit of body fat and you're like, shit, my weighted pull-ups have gone up. So relative to body weight, it can go up. But the main thing is all we're doing is trying to sustain the level of muscle mass that we've spent so long gaining when we come down. So it's time either way. It's, you know, everything comes down to that element.
Especially at a high training age, you know?
Oh, for sure. 100%.
Especially that. So
Yeah.
let's transition into body fat, right? So when you're working with clients, for instance, I know there's different ways to skin a cat, but like, and some individuals say like, look, if it's not a DEXA, it's worthless. And some even say if it's not, if it is a DEXA, it's still not even that accurate. So like, I still like to think that you still want to have some type of measure, you know?
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be perfect, but like, what are you using at the moment, if you are using anything?
So I'm one to kind of like, I've got access to a DEXA like scale at my gym. So it's a pretty powerful body fat measurement scale. But again, I've got trust issues when it comes to those kind of things. So, but the main thing that I do is that if I'll measure myself a couple of times a year on that. If I'm like peak bulk, halfway through a dieting phase, end of the dieting phase, you know, all of those kind of things, I'll measure it just out of kind of curiosity. But my main thing is measurements and weight. You know, are certain things going up faster than others? You know, are certain areas gaining size more than others? If my waist is staying pretty much the same and I'm gaining size elsewhere, the likeliness is it may be a little bit of body fat, but it's going to be muscle mass as well. It's very rare now in kind of at the stage I am as a natural competitor. You'll be lucky if I gain an extra kilo stepping on stage every year or even every 2 years. That's the kind of unfortunate stage I'm in because I'm an advanced trainee. We're not going to gain that much. If you take a 1 year off season or a 2 year off season, you're not really likely to gain more than a couple of kilos at absolute best. And that's just the reality of it. So for myself, it's all about the scales and my gym performance ultimately. So I measure myself every day because again, I take it with a pinch of salt. I'm not like, oh, I weigh heavier, I weigh lighter. I'm like, okay, well, what's this down to? I kind of use it almost as an indicator of how my digestive system is working, whether there's any digestive stress, whether I'm kind of bloated, I'm weighing more. What is it due to? Was it certain meals I've had? How I feel after certain meals, whether I feel tighter and so on and so forth. But a lot of it in reality, as long as you've got certain measurements that you do. So for me, it's consistently the scales and my lifts in the gym. Are they progressing? How much is my body weight going up over time? And how much of my resistance training, how much is the actual load that I'm lifting going up over time? If those two factors are in control, I couldn't give a shit about my body fat because I know it's staying within that threshold that I like it to be in. And that's where my performance is best, as we kind of said earlier. And that's just the way I like it to be. I like to be in control of certain variables, but in reality, I don't really care too much about my body fat. Even in competition, the past few years, we go based on how our condition looks. We're not going to go down. You will get to a point where, in reality, if you were to measure yourself with calipers, you're talking like a couple of millimeters, and it's going to come up with a pretty inaccurate calculation of your body fat anyway. It will say you're 4 or 5% when you're probably 6, 7, because that's just what the stage that we get to when it comes to condition anyway for stage.
Right. Muscle mass is small. It's a long journey, man. Naturally, man.
Yeah.
People forget that muscle doesn't come in pounds, man. It comes in grams.
That's it. That's it. But it's those grams that lift the extra kilos in the gym.
Right.
It's not time. The pound. You know, if you've got an extra pound of muscle, you could have an extra 10 kilos on a lift. So it just depends, doesn't it? And that's the thing. As long as we're in control of those really, really small factors, even if it's as simple as just weighing yourself a couple of times a week, but taking it with a pinch of salt, not like, oh, I'm gaining weight too fast. Look at what the weekly or monthly average of you gaining that weight is, as opposed to, oh, I'm weighing 2 kilos heavier today. Well, okay, well, you had a big meal last night. You've not had time to digest it. There's little things like that. But yeah, I think that's the important thing, is just to be in control of a few variables at least, because I'm in control of my nutrition. That comes naturally to me. You know, I can be flexible. I'm pretty good at, call it guesstimating, as it were. If I know roughly how much your average chicken breast weighs, I know roughly how much, you know, a certain amount of rice is going to be in relation to cups and size and stuff like that. So I don't have to track all the time, but when I feel like it's getting out of hand, then I start to track again. Track for a few days, get back on it. consistently eat the same stuff, make sure my weight is moving in the right direction at an appropriate rate, and then flexible, relax. I know I'm getting the amount of protein that I need in. I know I'm getting the amount of carbohydrates and fats, give or take, but equally so, that's what keeps my satiety and my hunger levels on a good level. I find sometimes cramming in too much food, you can lose your appetite very, very quickly.
Yeah, big time. All right. No, I'm just in a good mood, honestly. I don't even know I'm laughing, man.
That's what I like to hear.
Get those days like that, man. Let's dive more into the food specifics, man. And I know that there's obviously more than one way to skin a cat with these types of questions, but sometimes it's just nice to ask these types of questions. Like, someone's feeling tired, and all factors aside of like, let's just say the stress is managed, sleep is on point. When it comes to the food, solely the food, what if you give me three, for example, what are three foods, man, that just boost your energy?
I mean, from a carbohydrate standpoint, the obvious is going to be your rice, your potatoes, your sweet potatoes. Pasta, I'm not as much of a fan of when it comes to a cleaner energy source. I believe it's a lot harder to digest than your rices and stuff like that. But ultimately, rice variations
And potatoes.
Potatoes for me, because I like the volume at the end of the day. I like pretty much every lunchtime. It's not often I have rice unless I'm in a kind of dieting phase, but even then I lean towards potatoes because you just get more for the amount, and stick them in the air fryer. They come out tasting great. It's all good. Rice can get a little bit samey and a little bit boring, but undoubtedly it's one of the best. It is one of the best sources of energy out there when it comes to just a clean carbohydrate.
I agree, man. And it's funny because me having like Mediterranean roots, the quarter Maltese that's in me, like I guess we just love pasta,
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And like I find that like if I'm being, and the thing is like after every year, every couple of years, you gotta do reevaluations, When I was like 21, I could eat like massive bowls of pasta, go right to the gym, no problem. But now a couple of years later, it's like I feel tired, man. I feel like knocking out on the couch if I eat too much pasta. So it's like I have to weigh it accordingly. If I have like, for example, like no more than like 200 grams, it has to be like, it can't be more than that. Like I feel like I'm too tired after that, But
That's
what I'm trying to say is that
it just takes a lot of digestion, doesn't it?
it does, yeah. And like when I look at a lot of these lifters, their full day of eating, like most of the carbs tend to be on the rice potato side. The pasta's still there, but like if we're talking about the dominance, sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, variations of rice, and like you connect certain dots. You're like, man, like my performance is so much higher with just potatoes. Is like my main, like right now my main one is like sweet potatoes and rice. Like those are the pasta still comes along. I'm still gonna have a bit every day, but I'm definitely not eating it more than once a day. And if I do, it's not a massive bowl, Ronnie Coleman bowl. You know what I'm saying?
That's it. And you come to the point where you've got people have taken it to that new extreme of the whole cream of rice for breakfast. Is that a thing over there?
No.
So like cream.
Not
cream
for me,
rice,
at least.
It's pretty much. It's kind of like having oats for breakfast, but cream of rice is kind of like a little bit more smooth, a little bit more baby food like when it comes to like texture. So it's kind of like if you're going to have a bowl of oats can be like a little bit lumpy and stuff, and you've got a little bit more texture to it. Cream of rice is kind of like a slightly more, it's creamy and thin. So it's kind of like,
right.
Have you ever had rice pudding?
Yeah, I've tried it once. Yeah, it was given to me by yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that, but it's almost like it's almost thinner. It's not as lumpy and stuff like that. But people start have like a lot of, especially in the bodybuilding community and the kind of the optimal crowd, obviously, have kind of gone down the route of like cream of rice for breakfast with some protein powder or whatever, and then it'll be rice for lunch, rice for dinner, or potatoes and stuff like that. But it's all clean carb sources. I mean, I can't say I'm as clean as that for breakfast. Like from a satiety standpoint, I'm leaning more towards things like the breads, bagels and stuff. But I know it's not as much of a clean energy source for me, but it's a lot more calorie dense. It enables me to get in the amount of calories that I need because it's easier for me to do that than have you know, 3 bowls of cereal or however much oats and stuff. And quite frankly, I've got a lot less time in the mornings if I'm going out and I'm training a one-to-one client. I can make a bagel pretty quickly. I can't, you know, making oats and letting them cool down and stuff like that. It's not in my lifestyle. I don't have the time sometimes. If I've got to go out to a client and I've got like limited amount of time, I will lean towards more calorie dense things. I don't want to go to the gym training a client feeling heavy and bloated and stuff after piling down loads of oats and stuff. So, you know, you've got to think about lifestyle as well, haven't you, when it comes to your carbohydrate source as well. It's got whatever fits, but so you've got to kind of like take a little bit of the optimal side of things, but also take a little bit of the what can I get in conveniently? What's gonna fit?
Yeah, what's gonna taste good too, like you just said.
Yeah, that's it. If you've not got the appetite for whatever you're eating, then you're going to lose your appetite very quickly as a whole, because if you're force feeding foods that aren't palatable to you,
I think that's a big aspect right there. It's in the training world, there's this expression that good training is boring training. You ever hear someone say that?
Yeah.
And I understand, like it with a lot of these questions we're going over, man, it's a lot of it falls in the gray zone, you know, if we're really seeing the patterns here.
Yeah.
It's like my channel should be called like gray zone fitness or something, because I'm always in that gray zone, you know. I'm never like yes or no. It's always, but we know like some of it there has to be some type of regiment, you know, like AKA the meat and potatoes, the big lifts, like you're saying, and then some of it's like a kid in the candy store, you know, you're doing like, it's not the end of the world if you go from like a preacher curl with easy bar to like a preacher curl with dumbbells, you know. It's not going to make or break your progress for the most part, you know, but like as long as the big basics are there. I lost my train of thought, man. But yeah, so like with the nutrition, for example, yeah, people have the same type of attitude, like just eat it, suck it up, it doesn't matter. But it's like, man, if the food just tastes bad, or if it's just really boring to the point where it's just like you don't want it, you're just rolling your eyes at your next meal that's in like in the next 2.5 hours. Like, how long term are you really gonna do that for? You know? So I'm still a big advocate. You still gotta make it taste somewhat good.
Yeah,
it has to be good for sure.
Yeah,
like, good nutrition is not boring.
Yeah, I think that the main thing with that as well is like, even take for example how I do my own nutrition. I kind of like give myself some rules where if I don't allow myself, let's say one day for lunch, I don't want potatoes. I've not got the appetite for it. I don't want rice. I've not got the appetite for it. Haven't got the time to boil pasta and stuff like that. Then I'll go to the shop and I will get some kind of bread, right? Whether it's like a baguette or whatever. I won't allow myself to do that more than a few days in a row, because then I know I'll develop a new habit. And I know that energy source isn't going to be as effective as the potatoes or the rice. So every now and again, if I've not got the appetite for those kind of those better energy sources, I'll go and get something else. But in my kind of rules with myself, I still need to have that balance. I need to not let the things get out of hand. So if I kind of lean more towards bread one day, I won't let myself do it for more than 2-3 days in a row, because then that habit will go, or that habit will kind of form, and then I won't actually be able to get out of the habit because I will lose my appetite for the potatoes and the rice altogether. So I kind of almost need to I need to force myself a little bit, but also listen to, you know, can I stomach rice today? Can I stomach potatoes today? Yeah, okay, that's cool. I'll have them. If I really feel like I'm forcing myself, I'll go away and then I'll come back. But if I was forcing myself all the time, I would never have it again. I would just completely chop it in. So it's a tough one. You kind of always have to have an element of discipline and balance, but you've got to allow that flexibility, because we don't like the same things every day. We have, you know, myself and my partner, we have different meals for dinner every day. They fit the macros, we track them in advance, but we still have different meals for dinner, because it's got to be a sense of enjoyment to diet in general. You can't, especially for some of our clients that are lifestyle based, and for me, the majority of mine are lifestyle based. Those, you know, those guys and girls aren't gonna be, a lot of them they've got young families. They're not going to be eating their chicken and rice while, you know, their husband or wife is cooking dinner for her or him and the kids.
Of course.
You've got to have that element of flexibility so that they still have a life outside of the gym. you know, what we promote in our businesses is that the gym isn't everything. You know, we promote health, fitness, longevity, lifestyle. There's a balance between all of them. We're not just like, okay, well, you've got to be hardcore for everything. We've got to promote balance.
I think that's important, but also like, I'm gonna bring it right back to the gym quick. Like some people say squats hurt my knees. I'm not doing squats. You haven't tried all the different variations. You haven't tried different protocols, different prep drills to be able to do that lift. So they just dismiss it. And the same thing goes with food. Like, oh, I don't eat fish. It's like, but they don't have any intolerances to it.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, well, maybe try cooking in a different way. Maybe you try seasoning in different. Maybe you put certain seasonings in like overnight or something.
Yeah.
Try cooking it the next day. You know what I'm saying? Let it marinate overnight, whatever the case is. And there's different ways to cook it. You might actually like it a different way. You just haven't found a way to cook it. You like it yet.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? As opposed to just piggybacking from one food to the next. Like the basics work too for the most part for most people, but you have to have the patience to try to find how to nail it, you know?
Yeah.
But as far as like, for example, like back to this 3 example, like cutting foods, what are like some foods that you tend to see patterns where like, man, these just work, man?
Oh, it's always the cleaner sources, generally speaking. And I use the term clean very loosely because in my eyes, there are no dirty food and clean foods. That's too extreme. I think everything has a purpose. You know, you could say you could live off chocolate and you're not going to look great and you're not going to feel great. But ultimately, I'm not going to label it a bad food. But ultimately, it is the slightly cleaner sources, the more kind of pure food sources that are going to get you the result a lot better. They're going to give you those kind of clean cut energy. So it's going to be, like we said, the rices, the potatoes, the kind of the oats, if your digestive system allows it and stuff like that. I know obviously some people out there are intolerant to gluten or get told they're intolerant to gluten, but that's a different story. So, you know, that you've just got to kind of stick to those clean sources, the ones that you know you get decent clear cut energy from. For some people, that might be bread. Their bodies may process it a lot better than others. And again, it's that individual factor that you find you as an individual or our clients as individuals are going to process different foods in different ways. They may be intolerant to certain forms of protein. They may not be intolerant to certain forms of protein. Some people agree with whey. Some people don't. Some people have got to use other things. I myself, I use a lot of collagen protein just because, you know, I digest it a little bit better. It's not as heavy on the stomach. We've just got to find that approach as an individual and find what works and what our bodies are able to process very efficiently.
Got you. I got something regarding bulking, right? So you often hear I got to bulk. But what about mini cuts during bulking cycles? You're doing a big push, you know? What's the purpose of that?
It depends how extreme you want to take it, and when it is really appropriate, because a lot of people they'll implement a mini cut because they feel bad about the way they look, not because there are any training factors that have gone down. There are not any digestive issues. There's nothing physical other than the way that they feel about themselves. However, kind of caveat to that is that if they are feeling down about the way they look, it could psychologically hinder their performance in the gym. So there is a little bit of that. You know, if they went on a mini cut that's going to be like 4 to 6 weeks, then fine. It's not likely to hinder their performance unless they're going to really, really rapidly drop their calorie intake and put themselves in quite a large deficit. But what I would say is that, go on.
My bad. I didn't say the full question. You take that versus just bulking slower. You know what I'm saying? What's the big, like, why not just bulk slower? What's the point of bulking and then you go on a 4 to 6 week mini cut and then you bulk again when you could just bulk like very slow the whole time?
Yeah. But well, I mean, yeah, there's the argument right there. The only kind of the only thing I'd have to say on that is literally just listening to those markers and going, okay, even if you bulk slower, you may get to a point where you're getting a bit of digestive stress, or you're getting, you know, you may even hit a bit of a plateau, and then you would have to increase the rate of which you're or increase the actual surplus that you're in to the point where you may be getting digestive stress. You may lose your appetite. So it's only if you're thinking from an optimal standpoint of what should be done best, I think it's good to allow or be open-minded to the idea of mini cuts, but only for the right reasons.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're going to be doing it's unnecessary. If you're doing it just based on the way that you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to dial it in because I feel like I've gained a bit too much body fat. Well, what's your performance saying? What's your digestive kind of patterns saying? Are you just feeling shit about the way you look, or are you performing shit? That's
So
all it
would
comes
you
down.
categorize that as like a deload, but for bulking?
Yeah, in theory, obviously, a deload could be a week or two, and the equivalent for a mini cut could be 4, 6, maybe 8 weeks. But anything after that, you're pretty much full on cutting.
There you go. So,
That's the thing. It depends. Like the people that take it to that next level of kind of, what are you really achieving, are the ones that they're going to say, oh, I'm going to go on a bulk. They'll eat anything and everything for like 3 months, and then they'll say they're going to do a mini cut, and they'll cut for like 2 months, and you're like, okay, well, in reality, you've only had one productive month within that
right.
time that you've been in a decent range. Like, what's the point in eating anything and everything to the point that you've lost your appetite and then you have to suddenly mini cut again? Like I said before, there's an appropriate rate of gain where the likeliness is you're less likely to lose your appetite, your strength is going to go up gradually, your body fat levels are going to go up gradually, and your weight is going to go up at an appropriate rate. But if you surpass that, the likeliness is some of those other factors are going to start to hinder. You might end up like, because of the digestive stress or the sheer volume of food you're taking in, it's going to, or even the level of body fat that you're going to, that you've obtained in a very short period of time, your sleep might start to really suck. And then that's going to affect your recovery, which is then going to affect your performance. And then it's that cycle all over again. So, those are the things to kind of look at. The main thing is with absolutely everything is that you give yourself an appropriate time and you gain appropriately as opposed to unnecessarily.
Got you. Let's talk about IF, intermittent fasting, and building muscle, right? So I'm never going to dismiss or knock a philosophy. Like, it's just a tool in the toolbox, I'm not going to say fasting is useless. It for sure has some application. But what I will say is that from personal experience, I've had tons of clients, morning clients, 8 a.m. at the gym. Performance is really low. Some of them slept well, but their performance is low, despite sleeping a lot. So the most common question I'm gonna ask is, what'd you eat before coming? Like, let's say, what'd you have an hour before? What'd you have at 7 a.m.? I'm not expecting them to eat right before the session, but like, give it a little bit of a window. Nothing. And like, okay, and you start to see so many patterns, the same thing happening. People coming underfed, empty stomachs, crappy sessions. Coincidentally, the best sessions they have, yeah, Phil, I had oatmeal in the morning, had bananas, blueberries, had a little shake, and they have their water bottle on them. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying fasting is useless, but I'm saying like it and also from talking to other coaches as well, like you come to a session when nothing in your system, the food is the fuel, and but at the same time, maybe there's a little piece I'm missing, but I'm just going from my personal experience. What do you think about it?
I think it's a tough one. Like intermittent fasting, I'll never write it off. Personally, I'm not a fan of the approach, and based on the fact that it's not often that it suits certain people's lifestyles, especially the kind of the standard 16-8 approach where, 16-hour fast, 8-hour eating window. And I'd rather call it, instead of the whole IF, I'd just rather just say, okay, so you've got an eating window then. We've all pretty much got an eating window. It's just most of us, it's slightly longer. It's probably, if the 16-hour isn't a fast, that's our eating window. And then the 8-hour is when we're asleep. That's just the way it kind of goes. So there's always going to be an element of fasting. But I think the main thing to be taken from that is, does it suit that individual's lifestyle? Do they get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym? Do they want to eat breakfast? Do they have the appetite to eat breakfast at 5 a.m.? But equally so, if they get up at 5 a.m., the likeliness is they've gone to bed relatively early, you'd like to think. So they've had ample amount of sleep. But how late did they eat the night before? And it's things like that that's going to correspond. But I think the main actual factor when it comes to intermittent fasting is how accustomed to training in that state are you? Are you accustomed to training in a fasted state? I know with myself personally, I train in a pretty much fasted state. I mean, I may have had the odd like Rice Krispie Square or something before I train, something like a little bit of a kind of a small carbohydrate hit and a pre-workout. That's me. I'm pretty accustomed to it. Sometimes if I've eaten too much, I don't feel like that energy is releasing as well as it could, you know, if I had an extra 2-3 hours to digest it. You know, but that's just the way that I like to train. I like to train in a somewhat fasted state, but it's more because I find my energy is a lot more clean at that time in the morning as well. So it depends what their pattern is and their overall routine. So kind of, you know, fasting is one element, but are they always accustomed to training in the morning at a certain time?
Right.
But then the caveat to that would be, if they could train at 2-3 p.m. in the afternoon after a couple of meals, would they have a better training session? But we'll never know because they've got to train before work or after work.
You will never know. We'll never know. Yeah.
Know. So
that's the thing. Like you could have, for example, like a 300K puller, like you're saying, watching this video and saying, what are you guys talking about? I never eat before my sessions, and I train them first thing in the morning in my basement, my garage, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's always going to be outliers. There's always going to be exceptions to the rule. There's always going to be that one guy who's doing OMAD and jacked out of his mind online. And he's natural and like, you know what I'm saying? So, but at the same time, I'm trying to connect the dots on my end and just see more patterns, you know? And obviously when you're working with someone, you take the individual for who they are. I'm not comparing the individual to somebody else, but at the same time, if I see that performance is going down or it's just rarely up, one of the first things I'm gonna look at is nutrition.
Yeah,
if you're not eating before your sessions, and coincidentally, the sessions you do eat,
yeah,
you're having better sessions, then yeah, 100% as a coach, I'm gonna draw the lines, I'm gonna connect the dots and say, hey, maybe, I think it's pretty safe to say when you eat before training, you have better sessions. Maybe we should do that more. Yeah. But sometimes people have the argument, well, I'm not hungry. I have no appetite. I just have no need to eat in the morning. Well, I guess it's like, but you have no need to have energy in the gym either. Sometimes it's like, there has to be some type of element, like at least a banana, man, something, man. Like, don't come empty-handed, you know, don't come. Anyways, just some observations I've been making, you know, about fasting. And like I said, once again, to conclude that topic, I'm not dismissing it. What about like fasted cardio? What are your thoughts on that? Because I know some competitors do that.
It's one of those things, because ultimately you're going to do fasted cardio that you're then going to replenish the glycogen that you've lost, or you're going to have readily available energy before you do the cardio anyway. So it depends. Again, it depends when the cardio is. If it's fasted cardio first thing in the morning and you've eaten late the night before, is it going to make much of a difference? If you've had a 16-hour fast, let's say, just back on the topic of fasting, but if you've had a 16-hour fast and then you're going to do fasted cardio in the morning, you're going to feel like the likeliness is you're going to have to kind of put a little bit more effort into it. You kind of almost have to have the mentality to get you through that cardio. But is there any actual physiological benefit to doing fasted cardio over non-fasted cardio? It's kind of, a lot of the research seems to be inconclusive, because some says that it is more beneficial, some says that it's not, because ultimately your energy output throughout the whole of the day on average is going to be the same. It's not going to increase your overall energy output by doing something fasted versus non-fasted. But it depends when you're doing it as well, because if you're doing a fasted resistance training session and then you're going straight into cardio afterwards, which is also fasted, you're pretty much doing yourself more harm than good, because you're going straight into a fasted cardio after fasted resistance training. You're not replenishing anything. So you could hinder your recovery and ultimately your performance in future sessions just because you're adding that onto a session. So it's all about when it's applied. I mean, in reality, I'm not it's more of a mental thing, right? It's like you get people that get up in the morning, they have a cold shower. Right. And they do it because they think some people do it because they think it's going to aid in fat loss for whatever reason. But a lot of the time it's having the mentality to do so. It's the kind of mental resilience that you gain from it that could then transfer into how you approach the rest of your day. So for some people, it could be a case of they'll get up, they'll do fasted cardio, and they'll be like, yeah, this has got me into really good headspace. I had the discipline to do that with no food in me. And it gives them the kind of mental resilience to carry on with the rest of their day with that same discipline. And to me, that's the only kind of the benefit I would say that I've seen with myself when I've had to do it for, leading up to competitions and stuff like that, is that it gives you good momentum going into the rest of the day. I can't say I've seen any benefit when it comes to an increase in overall output in comparison to non-fasted cardio. And I can't say I've been taken part in any studies where it's concluded, here or there. So, I'm pretty impartial. I'm not, in all honesty, I'm not too clued up on the science side of things, but in reality, I think a lot of it's just a mental resilience thing. If you can do it, then great. But you don't have to.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about people, even people close. I have people close to me who fast. So
yeah.
This is also why it's like I'm talking about it.
Yeah, and it's also like a lot of people kind of come to the conclusion that they'll swear by it. They'll be like, I do fasted cardio, and that's the reason that I've done this, that, I've lost weight, I've done this, that, and the other. But in reality, well, they can't provide the backing and the research to say that is actually confirmed. It's confirmed that that's why they've achieved what they have. In reality, it's like, well, no, you've done any form of cardio. It's not the fact that it's fasted. It's the fact that you've increased your output to the point that it's put you in more of a deficit and you've lost more body fat. There's nothing to say that what you've done fasted was better than if you did it non-fasted, because they themselves have just concluded that it's the fasted cardio, not the extra output, that's given them that result.
It's funny, a while ago, man, this is years ago, and I forgot who said this, man, but remember like the caveman diet there?
Yeah.
Paleo diet, and like someone was talking about fast, like IF, and they were saying, man, the monks who live on the mountains, they meditate all day, they're just fasting, and they do OMAD. They would do 1 meal a day, and they're bald and they're just jacked out of their minds. And the way he framed it in a certain way where it's like they're minimalist lifestyle, and they're jacked out of their minds, and they just like stress free, and they're in the mountains, and just, you don't want to be like that, and like the guy who's just working accounting, he just watched that, he's like, man, like I want to be stress free, just shave my head and be like a jacked monk, and just maybe fasting is the way, So I'm saying, like, a lot of the times the marketing plays a big role in this. I'm not saying this is the only marketing strategy that's used for this, but I'm saying Slams, they buy into it so much that like they take it as Bible, where it's like, this is the way.
Yeah, that's it. And like, if jumping to conclusions were a sport, like these people would be like, they'd be Americans, it's because they will jump on the first thing that comes to mind. And it's, in reality, if you look at it, you can kind of take the monks in the mountains example, and you could say, well, why are they, let's say they are jacked, of which I guarantee they've seen a couple of videos of some that are, but the majority aren't. That's just how it is. That's not true from my experience with monks, of which I have none. But anyway, like, you could take that as an example, and you could just look at absolutely every other factor about their lifestyle. It's a very simple lifestyle. It's relatively sedentary, but also it's very active in other ways. They may do a kind of form of calisthenic training. They do a lot of martial arts, so they're active in that sense. They're meditating a lot, which is very sedentary. Their energy balance with the meal that they eat, that 1 meal a day, is giving them enough, but it's not giving them enough to be in a substantial surplus or a substantial deficit. Their body will become accustomed, and that will be what's known to them as maintenance. So their body will just make the most, and it will almost have achieved that kind of state of balance between body fat and muscle mass and whatever, because they're never eating any more or less. They're just going to eat that same bowl every day. Their hunger levels may go up. They might increase that bowl a little bit. It may go down, but they're always staying at that kind of maintenance. They've got that window that they stay in. So it's neither here nor there to go, oh, well, it's the 1 meal a day that they're eating is the reason they look like that. Well, no, it's everything outside of that. That meal is a small factor, and it's their overall activity, it's their overall energy balance is why they look the way that they do.
Yeah, one of my other theories behind it is people just like to be part of something, and they like to be in these subconscious communities, whether they're aware of it or not. So the same thing with, like, you just gave the shower example. Like, there's forums right now online of people just talking about their experiences of like their cold showers. And there's like, just like how there's powerlifting circles and there's bodybuilding circles, there's circles for things like that. There's circles online for vegans. There's circles online for people who do IF.
Yeah.
And they speak very highly about it, and at the same time, as they should, everybody wants to be part of something. And you don't want to be riding this journey alone. But what I'm saying is when you hear, like, when you go online, you see you're on this forum and you see hundreds of other people talking about their experiences with fasting, and maybe some of them are on gear, maybe some of them aren't, maybe some of them have crazy genetics, but you see so many jack guys like, hey, you know what? Like, it works. It's good enough.
Yeah,
So,
and the more likely you are to include yourself in one of those in any circle, because I could say I'm guilty of being in a circle of the kind of bodybuilding, like the natural bodybuilding community. If you're in any kind of circle, you can guarantee that someone else is going to confirm a bias that you have. If you've got a bias and you've got an inkling that something is, if a certain lifestyle, a certain food, a certain way you eat, a certain way you train is going to give you a certain result, someone within that circle is going to confirm that bias. Even if everyone else doesn't, someone will. And that's what gives you, you can take it's kind of like someone gives you an inch and you can take a mile, because the more within these certain communities are, some are obviously more extreme than others, and will kind of come up with more extreme cases, but they're out there. Ultimately, you're all going to confirm each other's bias. And then that's what sometimes also kind of points people away from the research, and they tend to travel away from the research because that kind of white lie gets turned into a whole trend and a whole non-research backed argument, because someone down the line that was somewhat reputable may have said something that's deemed as something else. So it's all like, within kind of each community, I'd like, and again, it's like, you and I would like to consider ourselves as, so we're not exclusively a part of a community. We like to kind of take every piece of information, take it with a pinch of salt, and come to our own conclusion. And I think that's what the best coaches do. You've got to be open-minded. You've got to be able to take that information and say, okay, well, I see the application. I can see why you would think that, but in my experience with my clients and myself, it doesn't work for me, or it doesn't work for us. So I think that
too open-minded sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's like, especially in the YouTube space, it's funny how those people want the yes or no's, and that's. I was gonna make a separate video. I probably will later on, but like that's probably one of the biggest things that bothers me about YouTube in general, or more so a lot of the viewers. It's that people just want the yes or no's. But it's like there's so many factors that come into play, and it's like you just want a black or white. Where I'm living in gray land, and even if you want a yes or, there's some cases where I will put my foot down and be like no, but there's always the person who could play devil's advocate, and they could get me right back in the gray zone and be like, you know what, maybe you change one factor, and then it's like, yeah, I'm back in the gray zone.
Yeah, and I mean, like people could turn around and say, okay, well, what's the best way to gain muscle? What's the best exercise? What is the best route with your nutrition? And the answer, I mean, the best answer will always be, it depends. It's never going to be pointing towards something straight away. If you ask, if someone asks their coach, what is the best way to do this? And the coach will answer straight away with their opinion on the best way to do something, the likeliness is they're probably not a great coach. Because
yeah, that's the funny thing though. There's only so much you could put in a reel in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And then it's like, but now all of a sudden to like the younger generation, it's like, oh well, Ryan sounds indecisive because he's giving me a cop out of it depends. But then again, if you say why it depends, it's no longer real. Now it's like a mini seminar,
Yeah. And you could ask me absolutely any question, and if I come up with an answer, I can guarantee 20 seconds later I will explain it to the best of my ability, and then 20 seconds later I'll say, however, or but what about this? Or on the other side of the spectrum, like there are so many different, there are so many different kind of factors when it comes to anything in general. There is no best. There is all. It depends on every single variable that you have available. It depends on, if someone asks me a question, the amount of DMs I get of people that are just like, oh, how can I lose this last bit of body fat? Blah blah blah. I'm doing this, that, and the other, and I'm like, well, I have no context. You've given me I can't tell you the best way of doing anything, and I can't tell you where to go from here because you've given me no context. I don't know you. We've not worked together. I don't know any of your background. I don't know, your activity, your diet, your output, your training. Someone could just say, yeah, I train really well and I eat really well. And I'm not losing body fat. And I'm like, well, that's not very much context. We need that. context to be able to ride and kind of give a valuable input. Otherwise, our input is absolutely useless if we've got no context surrounding it.
And that's exactly why, if I have, for example, like a free consultation online, or if I have it like in the office at the gym.
Yeah.
If, let's just say, for the sake of this example, if it's online, right? I'll hop on the Skype call with them, Calendly call, sorry, and then from there I'll ask the questions, and then look if it's good to go, and now it's like I'm officially their coach. Send over the questionnaires, and I tell them, look, anything we didn't address in the call, any question I didn't ask you, if I already asked you in the call, I'd leave it blank.
Yeah.
But you basically have a training questionnaire and you have a nutrition questionnaire, and they start to really see how many variables there are, man. And I had to really trim down my questions, man, because I was just, eventually there was a point where I had way too many. But even when it's trimmed down to the absolute most, there's still a good amount, man, because I'm trying to gather as much data as possible. And you could tell a lot about someone by the way they answer the questions.
Yeah.
So that's why I had to restructure the questions again, where it's like, you can't give me that answer because my question is so precise. You can't give me a yes or no. I'm asking very specific ones. But I'm saying once I have all these factors into play, then I could give you more specific answers. But to just ask me at face value, hey, what do you think about this? It's like, how much you charge? Well, it's like, I got a lot of different packages, man. So you have to, like, we need to hop on a call, man. I can't just give you a blank answer in my DMs. Like, I can't give you a price tag in my DMs. Yeah. So people, they just want these yes or no's, and that also tells you the state of mind that they're in.
Yeah.
Let's just say I said, yeah, $1,000. It's like, okay, well, $1,000 for what? Like, what? People just want the yes or no's, and it's like, these are oftentimes, especially in the coaching space, people who just don't last. They don't stick around.
Yeah. Because the difference for them, they just want either a result or no result. There's no in between. There's not how to obtain the result. It's just, can you get me the result? Yes or no? How much do you charge? That's it. It's like you said about the way that you kind of the way that you gather information. I used to have my consultation form, or not even the consultation form, my application form used to have quite a lot of not necessarily in-depth questions, but quite a lot of questions that find out a lot about the client on the actual, just the application form itself. And I would find, I can see I've got a platform where I'm able to see how many people have obviously submitted an application form, but I'm also able to see how many people have dropped off before actually completing it. I can't see who, but I can see how many. And the amount of people that would drop off the moment the questions go into a little bit more depth, because they realize the depth of things that you need to know, or essentially they start to identify the variables that you need to be in control of. If I'm saying, do you currently track your nutrition? It's yes or no, that's fine. But if I say, do you currently track your nutrition? Can you write down what your current macronutrients are? And it will scare them off. And sometimes the questions used to be a little bit too in depth, so that now obviously I'll get them on a call and we'll go through these things a little bit more in depth. But originally people will see the questions and they actually realize how much more there is to the coaching than the training plan. Giving them a little meal plan for them to follow for like 2 weeks until they drop off. It's completely different when they actually start to realize. And once you've got them onto the call and you establish, look, this is what I provide. This is how we work together. Not necessarily this is what I give you. This is how we work together to achieve a result. They then start to actually see the value in it more. If they've not seen the value at that point, they're still too hung up on what the price is. They can't actually hear what you're saying. They don't actually know what you're giving, because ultimately all that they're reflecting on is the price. And they're like, okay, well, I'm not willing to do what it takes and pay that much money.
That's the question that bothers me the most, man.
Yeah.
Always a red flag when someone asks how much I charge.
If it's the first thing they ask, I can understand if they've got budgets to stick to and this, that, and the other, but if they're not at least willing to discuss things further before asking the price, it's a 9 times out of 10, it's a no-go.
If they come to me and they're like, look, Phil, for the last 2 years, I've been running like a full body program.
Yeah.
3 times a week. My nutrition, I've been trying to track it, but it's not too structured. I'm getting they give me a little bit, give me 20 seconds of context. And then look, I'm just not where I want to be. My numbers not where I want them to be. And then how much you charge. That's different from just how much you charge.
That's very different. Exactly. Yeah.
It's very different. And my classic line, I've said this so many times, man. I sound like a broken radio, but people don't know what the difference is between paying the cost and paying the price. The cost, that's my service. That's the e-transfer. That's the transfer you'll send to the website, PG.Coaching.ca. The price is different. That's how much you're paying with your hard work.
Yes.
And I heard this one story. I believe it was Westside Barbell. I think it was in a podcast where they said, you know how much this gym costs? It's free. You're paying with your blood, sweat, and tears on the floor, on the platform. And people were like, oh, it's probably like $2,000-$3,000 for the year for sure. Nah, man. Like the owner was making money off like the equipment, and like he doesn't want your money, you know? From what I heard, I might be wrong. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But it's like people are so focused on fixated on the price, but it's like, and this is exactly why people love getting. I haven't been to a barber in years, you know, but like I think tattoos are badass. But people love tattoos, haircuts, piercings, just getting work done on their body because you just lie down.
Yeah.
Or just go to a changing room and it's instant. You know, you have this T-shirt, then you have this T-shirt when you walk out. But bodybuilding, or should I say like physique transformation, doesn't work like that. Like you got to work for every gram of muscle, and it people don't want to hear it. You know, people want to be lied to, and they want a coach to be like, yeah, I could get you shredded, and like there's not even a bulking process. Yeah, I'll get you shredded by summer, no problem. And it's like people just love to be lied to, but it takes like a guy like me to be like, nah, man, this is the reality of what it is.
Yeah,
I don't want to just take your money and just lie to you.
Yeah, that's the thing. And the thing is, that's what builds us. You know, it's great. You can lie to people until, you know, the end of days, and that's going to get you short-term clients. It might get you clients saying that you could do something because that's all they want to hear. They want to go, oh yeah, I can get you a result. I can just pay me the money, fine. But they're not going to be with you very long. And what builds a long-term sustainable brand and what builds a reputation is you being honest. People are going to resonate with you. They're going to appreciate the fact that you're being honest. And you could even say from the standpoint of, you know, some people could approach you and they're going to build a lot of trust with you if you turn around to them and say, well, actually, you don't need my full coaching package. Like your nutrition is actually really good from everything that you say, from everything that you've got tracked, you've shown me. You just need, like, we can just taper your training. We can just do training only. And it's actually at this price instead of the full package, which is at this price. And they'll really appreciate that. They will build a lot of trust with you because you're not trying to sell them a product, and you're not trying to sell them the highest price point product you have. You're trying to sell them the result that you know that they can obtain, as opposed to just trying to sell them your highest paying products. You're trying to actually
100%, yeah.
You know, they're going to actually appreciate the fact that you've not tried to sell them the highest paying products. You've saved them money because they're actually open to paying you the biggest amount. But you've gone, no, actually, no, in reality, like, you may not need that. Like, let's look at the variables. Let's jump on a call. Let's discuss what you really what you're really looking to achieve. And let's jump to conclusion of, this is the best package that suits you. It may not be the most expensive package. It may not be the cheapest, but this is the one that suits you. People are going to kind of build a trust in you because you're just being honest with them. You're like, okay, well, in reality, we probably need to jump on the bigger package. We need to be a little bit more nutrition focused, but hopefully after 2-3 months, if we start to obtain a result, we can actually drop you down to the other package, which is at a lower monthly price point. But they appreciate stuff like that.
I would even go as far as saying, man, sometimes like just referring them to another coach altogether, man. Like if someone wants to increase their vertical and jump as high as, I'm not that guy.
Yeah, 100%.
Be like the Olympic weightlifting, I'm not that guy. So, but I know some guys who could help you with that.
That's the thing. I will always
say, respect you way more for that too.
Yeah, and like, as well versed as we are in what we do, and as many general population clients we've probably had clients from all backgrounds, but we know our niche now. And while we're willing to take on people slightly outside of our niche, it still needs to be within our comfort zone. If someone comes to me and they say, oh, I want to start doing, if I want to train for like high rocks or CrossFit and stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, not like, I know all the movements, but I have no idea about how to structure, periodize any kind of CrossFit program. I'm not well versed in Olympic lifting. I know the lifts, I can perform the lifts, with, you know, borderline okay form. It's not my forte. I'm not a specialist. You know, we are our specialists in our field, and as long as you're honest with them and just say, look, I'm happy to refer you to so and so, they may be a little bit more able to help you. However, if you were looking to make a substantial change to your body composition and you're open to different styles of training, then we could try and work together to find a style that suits you. But I'm not going to program you some CrossFit because I have no idea. You just got to be honest, haven't you? That's the thing.
Let's bring it back to this nutrition, man. We're going on in a bit of a rabbit hole, man.
That's it.
So last thing we were talking about was the IF. Let's talk about the vegans now, man. And I know there's like some controversy with this. People saying like, well, but I really want to know your take on it, you know, because there's some circles that say, man, if you're a vegan, it's gonna be very hard to build muscle. But I still see some lifters out there. I can't name you many, to be real honest with you, some of them I can't even tell if they're natural or not. I didn't really dig that much deep into it. Not to say everybody has to train to look like they're natural or not either. But as far as like someone comes to you and they're like, look, I want to work with you, but I'm vegan and I'm not changing my nutrition. I'm not compromising these foods. But I want to build as much muscle as possible, though.
I mean, in reality, yeah. Well, you can say, yeah, we'll definitely try and build as much muscle as possible, but I can't guarantee that the amount of muscle that you build is going to be as much as possible it's going to be as much as possible with regards to you being vegan. It's not going to be as much as physically possible as a natural athlete. It's going to be as much as possible regarding your dietary requirements, your lifestyle, and so on and so forth. You know, I'm not going to turn around and say, oh yeah, no, we can definitely build just as much as someone who is non-vegan, because the options with regards to sources of protein are it's just so much easier, so much more convenient if you're not a vegan. It depends what kind of ethics you have around veganism, and that's my own kind of personal opinion on it. If you're an ethical vegan and it's purely based around you know, animal violence and so on and so forth and all of that kind of side of things, then that's completely fair enough. But you then need to find out where your ethics lie and how far you're willing to go when it comes to gaining muscle. Because if you find it's an animal cruelty thing and you're vegan out of choice, but in reality you don't really care about eating fish and stuff like that, and you don't mind eating fish, then there's no real need to be fully vegan. You can kind of go down the vegetarian route, the pescatarian route, and stuff like that. But it depends what their ethics are. Sometimes people are a little bit too easily convinced, so they've gone down the vegan route for absolutely, they can't really justify fully why they've gone down that route. If they can fully justify it, fantastic. But in reality, it's just going to be a lot harder. I don't think they can gain muscle as I don't believe that they can't gain as much muscle. I just don't think it's going to be as rapid, as fast and effective. Yeah. I know guys that are big guys that are vegan. They've not always been vegan though. That's the difference.
Let me cut you off right there, man. I see some guys online jacked out of their minds. Some of them enhanced, some of them not. But some of them, they just they were vegan like a month ago. This is not a recent this is a recent transition. But they're kind of coming on camera as if they were like lifetime vegan.
That's it.
Not the same, man.
Yeah, and that's the
like the guy who got off gear like a month ago. He's still holding some size, you know.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I'm natty. I'm natural.
Yeah.
Look at the blood work, this and that, like.
Yeah, and I mean, just to tap into that slightly, like, you know, in the natural federations and stuff that we compete in, some of them are lifetime natural, some of them are 10 years natural, and you've got to differentiate between the two, because you have to kind of, like, you do a polygraph test and a urinalysis test and stuff like that. But ethically, it's got to be within your ethics that you kind of like, okay, well, I've not taken anything in 10 years. You're still going to be holding some mass though. That's the thing. And it's the same, you know, some federations are lifetime natural. Again, it's more based on ethics. But for someone to turn around, like a YouTuber or an influencer, to turn around and say, well, you know, all of this that I've got right now is down to the lifestyle that I live, the vegan lifestyle, the you know, the oh God, what's his name? The Liver King lifestyle, you know, like stuff like that. You've got to really take it with a pinch of salt, because you could go back, you can find a piece of information. If you go down that rabbit hole and you search their social media, you'll find a video of them eating meat. You'll find them saying something, or you'll find something slipping out about them and how they've obtained the physique that they have. I've no doubt that there are a lot of vegan athletes out there that have been lifetime vegans, but in comparison to the ones that have got where they are, mostly being vegetarian, pescatarian, full meat eaters, having normal kind of diets, it's going to be very, very slim. The amount of vegans in comparison that have kind of reached that level is going to be substantially less.
Yeah, I like to compare it to like the calisthenics. You know, like some people they swear by calisthenics. They don't never touch a weight.
Yeah.
And some of them are jacked. Don't get me wrong, but like to never touch a weight, it's like you're definitely leaving some stuff on the table.
Yeah. But then
it's kind of like,
that's the thing. You could say, like, you know, you could say a pure vegan. Well, you can make a comparison. So a pure vegan lifestyle with supplementation, compare that to someone that says they only do calisthenics, but they add weight to their pull-ups and their dips. They add exterior resistance.
Right. For the upper body.
For the upper body. Yeah, for any kind of, so when they master, when they kind of, they've got to a point where they need to push for more, they need to push for more strength. If a vegan gets to the point when they need to push for more size, they're going to have to start supplementing with protein powders and so on and so forth. You know, so that vegan lifestyle and, you know, their whole argument, especially when it comes to because a lot of vegans that aren't necessarily ethical vegans, their argument is all about processed foods and food prices and stuff like that. They're going to start to have food that is ultra processed into supplements. They're going to start taking different kind of supplements that are then going to contribute to them continuing to gain size. But again, it's a very individual thing. Some people need more calories to be in a surplus. Some need less calories to be in a surplus than others. And if their lifestyle allows, and their daily activity and the amount that they can take in, if they can get ample protein as a vegan, fine. Is it going to be as efficient as as effective? Probably not likely, in my opinion. But who am I to judge? If a guy comes along and he can confirm he's been vegan his whole life and he's absolutely jacked and, you know, he's drug tested, he's not been on any gear and stuff like that, awesome. There's always going to be a few, 100%. But that doesn't.
The question is how many, you know? Exactly.
That doesn't necessarily conclude that it's just as effective to be trying to gain tissue as a vegan as, you know, being a meat eater, let's say.
Because I'll be honest, man, I've been lifting for a pretty long time, and I've been to a lot of gyms. And I talk about more than just training. We talk about nutrition too, and I have a lot of people on socials, a lot of influencers, a lot of coaches, like the whole nine. Yeah. And if I think very hard and I don't know anybody. I know they're out there, but I don't know anybody who's in my circle or even a circle of a circle who's vegan, who's natural, who's like jacked. Well, I know they're there, but I just haven't met one up to date.
Yeah, and I've met a few, but I can't confirm whether. I've met a few in the natural leagues. I've competed against quite a few. There's only a few that I can confirm that they haven't always been vegan, but there are some that I can't. You know, I don't know them well enough to know whether they've always been vegan, whether they were kind of like it was something that they've done since they've been lifting, or whether it's something they've been all their lives. It's hard, but you know, we know they're out there. But equally,
the comment I made, sorry to reframe, is lifetime vegans.
Exactly.
I'm not talking about someone who just turned vegan like last month. I'm talking lifetime vegans.
Exactly. And we know they're probably out there somewhere, but then it's just as likely that someone's a genetic freak, not necessarily that vegan lifestyle that led them that way. And it's how their genetics respond to that. And that's not to say that they could have been. It's like we mentioned. If Ronnie Coleman trained like he was in the optimal gang, there's nothing to say that he would have been any bigger or smaller if he trained optimally, or nothing to say that he would have been bigger if he trained optimally, or he would have won as many Mr. Olympias. There's nothing to say that the guys that have been lifetime vegan would be better or worse in their current state if they were meat eaters for that same amount of time. we'll never know. That's the unfortunate thing. You know, we can play the guessing games like everyone else. It's the same as people playing the PED card and just, you know, screaming gear at your favorite influencer and stuff. But there's not a lot that can confirm. If nothing's really been said, we can't confirm whether they'd be better or worse with or without it.
And the funny thing about, like, okay, I'm gonna hang up the vegan thing right after this, but
it's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, we could go about this all day, man. Like, what? For the record, we got like 4 or 5 questions left, anyways. But to end the vegan conversation, you could have a guy with the craziest, or a gal with the craziest genetics, and people are gonna attribute that to the being vegan.
Yeah.
But it's like, you don't have those genetics, man.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this in the next episode where we talk about like the assisted route and gear. But man, like, I've met some freaks, man. Anyways.
But I mean, just to tap into that quickly, like, I get people, the thing is, if I told, you know, earlier on in the podcast, I mentioned the fact that I don't really have whey protein because it doesn't agree with me that well. So I have collagen protein. The bioavailability of collagen protein is substantially less. I mean, I think it's something like 70 or 80 on the scale in comparison to whey, which is like 150 or whatever. But people could kind of jump to the conclusion that, oh shit, this guy's pretty big. He has collagen protein instead of whey. Maybe it's better. But that's not to say that I could be bigger, I could be smaller if I had whey protein. How much difference does it make? The overall amount of protein that I get in my diet is the same. The only kind of caveat you've got with the vegan side of things is that it's the how complete are their protein sources. That's it at the end of the day. If they can get X amount of complete protein in, who gives a shit? If they digest it well, if they're getting a result from it, then each to their own. If they find it easy to hit their targets and hit their markers to then gain that size, great, credit to them. Personally, I couldn't, but
yeah, you can't be splitting hairs, you know.
That's it.
Like, some people are like, okay, Ryan, it must be the grass-fed protein from New Zealand. It has to be, you know. And it's like,
yeah, as if because it's suddenly anabolic because it's grass-fed and it's from a specific country or whatever. It's splitting hairs with everything. That's the thing. Whereas
the only reason that they're attracted to that is because they could literally order it off Amazon within 5 seconds. And that's the most low-hanging fruit. But then them looking at the way you make your meals and your training, it's just too far-fetched for them. But they could order the protein powder though.
Yeah, so they'll go, oh, okay, well, if you have whey isolate instead of whey concentrate, they'll be like, oh shit, it must be the isolate. That's the reason he's so big. And it's like, well, no, he's still hitting his protein, regardless of whether it's whey or not. That's going to be a very, very, very minor percentage difference. If it's even a percentage, it's going to be such a minor difference. But they're looking at those small factors. People are going, oh, what do you think about BCAAs? And you're like, well, okay, well, are you eating enough? What's your overall protein content like? Don't worry about BCAAs until you've got everything else on point. You know, it's like everything. They've got their value, but like you're just kind of, you've completely gone down in the wrong direction. You need to focus on the main variables that you can control. Like, fuck, you don't worry about BCAAs. Are you drinking enough water? Like, are the nutrients you're taking in going around your body efficiently? Are they traveling? Are you digesting things right? Like, fuck the BCAAs. Don't like worry about that at the end. That's like the 1%.
And you tell them that, they won't listen.
No.
You check their Amazon cart, they still put the BCAAs anyways. They still put the protein, the grass-fed New Zealand, and you see like daisy chains, like all these other things. It's just
yeah. But then they're
going to
use them effectively, because if everything else isn't on point, then those things aren't going to make a difference. If they're not going to be able to have all the context surrounding why they're not achieving their goals, those little things, they're not going to be able to apply those things properly, because they can't be applied properly unless those other factors are in place and those other factors are enough.
100%, man. I always use the Christmas tree analogy, man. It's like I'm trying to build a tree here, and you're focused on these tiny decorations, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like we're focused on the big stuff, but like we're not gonna dismiss the details either.
Yeah.
Because they still have merit, but let's not only focus on these tiny details, right? So, next question, man. This is gonna apply to a lot of people, and a lot of people are for sure gonna like get off on this question, man. It's peaking for a photo shoot, right? I'm not even talking about going on stage. I'm not even talking about being shredded sub 10%. I'm just talking like your guy wants to look good at the beach. He has, for example, an event, maybe a shirtless party, whatever the case is. Like he wants to look good, man. Or maybe he's an entrepreneur. He has his own brand, and he wants to like have his product in his hands. And he wants to just have a six pack, you know. Wants to get to, let's say, Bob from accounting wants to get to 13% body fat. Let's just say 12. I saw on your IG, by the way, with you were spraying that guy, spraying one of your clients, I think, for a shoot.
Yeah.
He's competing, or
no? Just a shoot, just a lifestyle shoot. Again, exactly what you've described. So he's an entrepreneur. He does a lot of traveling. He wanted to look good, wanted to trim down. He had a lot of places to travel, meetings abroad, like places kind of, he's going to a lot of exotic places this year for various different events. He wanted to be in shape. And, you know, he's one of those clients that we cut pretty much, we give him a good cutting phase every year. So the amount of size that he gains between those cutting phases isn't substantial, but we're still able to make those improvements because he's not as experienced as a trainee as we are. So we're able to push for a little bit better each year, which is quite nice. But obviously we know the longer you bulk, the more you're going to come back with and stuff. But it's a lifestyle that suits him. But I mean, yeah, for the photo shoot, I kind of just threw him under the bus a little bit because you had a holiday the week before.
Right. I saw on your IG, man.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, truth be told, though, and I know it's different on where you live, because I know you said like the UK has like a big natural bodybuilding scene, but truth be told, especially in Canada, from what I observe, like most people do not want to go on stage, man. Let's be real. Like most people want to just, if we're talking about Gen Pop, they want to like, you know, lose the gut if they have it, and then they want to just have like nice crisp six pack, not even shredded, just like the what's his from Fight Club, the Brad Pitt, like just like, you know, just I don't know. Someone might comment and be like, oh, well, he was 8%. Well, I don't know I forgot what his body fat was, but like can't really think of the best example right now. But just, you know, just 12%. Like, you know, you have some visibility, but you're not very attainable, you know.
That's it. We're not going for like we're not going for the Zac Efron in Baywatch. We're kind of going for the, you know, people want to kind of. But I mean, everyone wants to look like Christian Bale in American Psycho because he was in incredible shape. He's incredibly lean, but at the same time, like you said, the Brad Pitt kind of look. Everyone wants to look like Chris Hemsworth did in Thor, but you want to kind of be as sustainable as you can. And that's a lot of my clients are very much like that. They've got young families. It's more about looking good, feeling good when they're on holiday at the beach, in the pool. They want to just feel good enough to kind of take their shirt off and take a bit of pride in the stuff that they've worked for. You know, my clients aren't the kind of guys that are like, oh, we're going to bulk for like 2-3 years and I'm going to go on all these holidays. I don't care how I look on the beach. I just want to get bigger and bigger and bigger. You know,
fair enough, though. Fair enough.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing, you know, it's ultimately, that's why I've got so many clients that are very lifestyle based. It's not often that I take competitors on, but it's not often I do because, you know, the lifestyle side of things is where the demand is at. And that's who I enjoy training. You know, with competition side of things, you have to be a lot more sharp, a lot more meticulous with the tracking element, tracking input, output, every single variable. With the lifestyle kind of clients, a photo shoot is about the most
their stage
to go for. That is their stage, exactly. And I will never, and the same, like I had 3 client shoots in the past probably 3-4 weeks, and every single one of those clients, we could have pushed for more body fat to come off very, very easily, but would it have made their lifestyles a living hell? You know, like all 3 guys are incredibly successful. They've all got very, very different promising careers in very, very different kind of areas. And these guys, like if I were dropping calories super low, if I were increasing their activity, for one, they don't have time. Their schedules are too busy. Their lifestyles are too busy. They have families. They've got very demanding careers. They've not got the time to push for more and more and more output, which then means we'd have to decrease calories even more to create more of a deficit. We only wanted to get to a good, healthy, sustainable level of body fat, not necessarily sustainable, but sustainable for a very short period of time. I wasn't looking for competition, stage level leanness with these guys,
Of
because,
course.
their cognitive function would suffer. They wouldn't feel great. They're not going to, sex drive would go. Having young families, stress is already pretty high. We want to manage all those kind of nice variables, and you want it to be as kind of easy and as simple as possible for them to kind of get into that state. So, we pushed for levels of body fat that we thought would look good. They look healthy. They look awesome. They look fucking aesthetic. But
The last thing they
like
want,
starving.
the last thing they want is to be like sub 10% on vacation. They can't even perform,
That's the thing, and even like that's the thing, and even like you go on vacation, if you want to like have a stiff drink or a cocktail or something, the last thing they want to be is like so lean and so depleted that they're getting drunk off like 2 sips of their drink. You're there to enjoy your life. They want to be able to have the output. They want to be able to go for a walk with their family on the beach. They don't want to be just sat there really, really flagging and stuff like that. We want their energy levels to be high, their performance high. Like all 3 of the guys that I've prepped for photo shoots recently, not one of them did their performance go down at all. If anything, for at least 2/3 of the dieting phase, their performance was still increasing, but just because we found that sweet spot of maintenance for their calories, where there was a lot of recomposition that occurred. There was a little bit of a drop in body fat. There's a little bit of what I can only assume was a gain in lean tissue, because their strength was going up, not even relative strength. Their strength with resistance training was going up. So I can only assume there was a little bit of lean tissue gain with some body fat loss, which we know isn't sustainable for very long. It's possible, but it's very fine margins before you've got to go either one way or the other. But, all of those guys, they performed consistently well throughout that whole dieting phase. And very rarely were they telling me that they were hungry, everything, looking at their satiety levels, their hunger levels, all the markers stayed on point. They didn't tell me they were flagging. They didn't tell me they were tired very often. They were saying that I was asking, how's your cognitive function? How's your sleep? How's your recovery? All those markers were staying exactly how we wanted them to, because it's a photo shoot. It's not a stage. They're not
Right.
self to that extreme. The idea, it's a lifestyle transformation, and all of these guys, part of the reason that I deem it a success, regardless of how they look, they all look fucking awesome. But the reason I deem it as a success is because there was absolutely no indicators that went down throughout the process. Their performance remained high. They gained strength relative to their body weight, sometimes gaining normal strength, and their energy levels were high. They were able to go about their daily lives, their careers, their family life, without any of that having to be sacrificed. Social events weren't sacrificed.
What did you call it before? A lifestyle lifestyle client photo shoot?
Yeah, it's a lifestyle photo shoot. That's about as extreme as I go for a lifestyle photo shoot. I mean, like, in reality, like I said, you could push for more body fat, more body fat to come off, but it's a lifestyle. Obviously, it's a fitness shoot, but it's a lifestyle. It's an obtainable from a lifestyle standpoint.
It's a gen pop shoot. I guess.
I mean, these guys were like, they're intermediate lifters, we could say. I wouldn't say they're intermediate to advanced. I wouldn't say they're fully advanced, but they've got enough experience to be regimented. They've got, everything. I've worked with 2 of the 3 of them. I've worked with them one-to-one for a long time before transitioning to the online side of things. So I know that the way that their training is on point. I know everything is on point. We've worked with each other long enough, all 3 of them, to know that if I say jump, they will say how high. That's just the way it is. But also we have that, they trust me enough to know that I'm not going to over diet them. We knew exactly what look we were going out to achieve, and we fucking nailed it. And that was the whole idea of the process.
But let's say we go into more specifics, because I know there's some coaches out there who will do like lifestyle shoots.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily like peaking for it. You know what I'm saying? Like the body fat's climbing down, and then the client's like, for example, flight leaves in 2 weeks, and it's like, okay, well, body fat's still going down a bit, and whenever our next session is, we'll get the shot. But there's some coaches, I'm sure, like yourself, where it's like, hey, well, I'm bringing a light to the gym, and we're gonna manipulate like your carbs and your water intake, like a couple days out, to really like get the best package possible for that shot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mind elaborating more on that? Like what changes to like to those factors are you making?
So you can treat the kind of peak for a photo shoot like a very almost a slightly less intense version of peaking for a bodybuilding show. Sometimes, again, like just to tap into the bodybuilding side of things, sometimes you don't need to peak. Sometimes you just need to lose a little bit more fat. Depends how conditioned you want to be. There are various different ways of which you can load your carbs. You can front load, meaning you have a high influx of carbs at the beginning of a week. Let's say you're 7 days out, high influx of carbs over the first few days. Then you drop down, you see how your body responds to those carbs, and then you can taper using the final few days to either increase, or if you're a little bit spilled over, you retain a little bit of water, you can drop those carbs down, just to kind of bring a more tight look. Think of the kind of photo shoot peaking. It's a less extreme version of that. So like I said, you've got the front load, which is you front load your carbs, you drop down, then you increase towards at the end. You've got a back load, which is you have a few low days and then you increase at the end. Or you've got a kind of linear load, which you just, you start low, you gradually increase up over time, you just feed them up and then kind of maintain a level of carbs dependent on the look that you like that they've got. If they achieve a look on day 3, day 4, even though their photo shoot's on day 7, you just hold that look. You just trickle in the carbs the right amount to maintain a look.
Right.
So with the photo shoot side of things, what you can actually do is, do a less intense version of that. And I just chose to do a slight backload, meaning that we dropped the carbs down for 3 days prior to, so let's say we were 5 days out from the shoot. Let's say the shoot is on day 6. On the first 3 days, we drop carbs nice and low. So almost kind of go through a little bit of a depletion phase. You can get a little bit of extra fat, fat lost within those first few days. You drop the protein down to maintenance, because by that point, again, same with competition, by that point, you don't need to have a substantial amount of protein, because in the last final few days before a competition or a photo shoot, it doesn't matter about sustaining muscle mass. In that final few days, it's not going to make a difference. So you drop that protein from a deficit amount to maintenance amount, which can save you, in some cases, can save you 200 calories. And then those calories can then be implemented elsewhere. But then what we'll also do is drop the carbohydrates down. Often a lot of my clients tend to go for a low fat option in general. They tend to have quite a high influx of carbs the majority of the time, with their fats being around, let's say, 20% of their total calories. So we can replenish fats a little bit while dropping carbs down, drop those calories lower than they would usually be for about 3 days. Then day 4 and day 5, we then start to trickle in a good influx of carbs. But we're not talking, for some of my guys, it was, 300-400 gram of carbs a day was a lot to them. That's about as much as I want to take it. I mean, I've personally, leading up to competitions, I've gone for rapid backloads where I've had 1,000, 1,200 grams of carbs a day or two before competition. If you peak it right and you get it right, you can fucking nail it and you look awesome. It's a bit risky though, because you can then spill over and then kind of look watery and shit. So yeah, that's neither here nor there. So I trickled in a decent amount of carbs where I know that they will feel fuller. They will be able to achieve a decent pump. And then the same on the 5th day. So first day, 300-400 gram of carbs, let's say for one of my clients, for example. Second day, again, a similar amount, just to make sure they've got ample amount of carbs to get a decent pump. Water levels just remain consistent. You find, it doesn't need to be taken to the extreme of competition where you start manipulating water levels. In reality, with competition now as well, the kind of most up-to-date methods don't require messing around with your water levels too much. Because if you've got too much water in your system and you've got an overspill of water in relation to carbohydrates and the ratio is a bit off, you can spill over. If you've got too little water in your system, carbohydrates can't travel, you won't get a pump. So you've got to stay on a good level regardless. Same with potassium, sodium levels, but that's a different story. But the main thing with the clients is that we trickle in the right amount of carbs so they can get a good pump. Those first three almost depletion days that we opted to go for with all 3 of those clients, it's just an opportunity to lose a bit of any kind of bloating they've got. It's an opportunity to drop a little bit of extra body fat, not a visible amount because it's only 3 days. And then we just feed up from there. And what you'll find is their appetite by the end of that 3rd day, they can handle those carbs quite nicely. And 400 gram of carbs in a day, even though some of them were on 250, 400 gram of carbs in a day was, it wasn't even touching the sides. They were able to take it so easily that 800 gram of carbs within the space of 2 days, they felt great. Their energy levels were there. It wasn't enough to bloat them. The only peaking thing that I would say that was the kind of that is exactly the same as a bodybuilding show is that we drop dietary fiber a couple of days out. Reason for that being, if you want to look super, super sharp for a photo shoot, if you're taking in a lot of dietary fiber at the back end, let's say you're at the back end of a dieting stage and you're taking in a lot of dietary fiber via just veggies and stuff, just because of the volume of food that you're trying to get in. If you're taking a lot of dietary fiber that way, generally speaking, what dietary fiber will do is obviously it's going to cause a little bit of GI stress. So it's going to draw water to the GI, meaning that, or the gastrointestinal tract, meaning that you might end up just kind of feeling a little bit watery around the lower abdomen. So just to create a little bit more of a tightness and to feel a little bit less bloated around the lower part of the stomach, draw that fiber out about 2 days or so before. And then that just kind of fixes any kind of little problems, because you may find people can be super, super shredded, like real washboard abs, and the lower part of their abdomen can still be just kind of protruding a little bit. Not necessarily look like body fat, but they can just, the stomach's not flat, it's protruding because there's a little bit of GI stress, they're a little bit bloated and stuff. So drawing the fiber out will take that away to an extent, generally speaking. But, water levels remain the same. The fiber thing's just a kind of a cute little trick. Carbohydrates just make sure they can get a decent pump. But it's, a very, very less. So it's a very diluted version of how you'd peak for bodybuilding, because, again, their lifestyles don't allow them to do the peaking protocols for bodybuilding a lot of the time. You don't want to be eating at your desk when you've got a really kind of when you've got meetings with clients at a high profile job and stuff like that. So we had to still make that level, that element sustainable.
Yeah, they don't even know what goes into that,
That's it. And I kind of like took them through the process a little bit. And again, there's no need for me to go into too much detail about what I was doing it and what I was doing and why I was doing it. I was just taking them through the process, talking them through it enough for them to understand what they're doing and how they're going to feel from what they're doing. Because, turning around to someone and saying, right, okay, so for the first 3 days, we're going to take away 600 calories a day from what you're already on at the moment, which is already low. They don't want to hear. They need to kind of hear a little bit of information around why you're doing it and what it's going to help with, and that it's going to make them look better on the day. But I don't need to go into details about every kind of little thing.
Right.
Give them enough to kind of continue with that trust. But they trusted me anyway. Yeah, it's one of those things.
But good job on the lifestyle client shoots, man. They look great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I want to get a lot more of those in the future. I know and one of those things is because I've not done a photo shoot in a long time, because sometimes the clients aren't in a place where their lifestyle allows it. Sometimes they feel like their dieting phase that they've been through isn't, sometimes they feel like it's not substantial enough. Sometimes they don't feel the need to do it. And it's got to a point where, it just so happened that 3 guys were all finishing their cuts around the same time. And I was like, do you know what? Let's get a shoot. And they all agreed, and it was awesome. And the amount of the traction that I've gained from other clients of mine that I've already got, they're like, oh, actually, yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Should we do one next year? And I'm like, great. This is great.
100%. They want to be a part of that.
They want to be a part of it. They take a lot of inspiration from it. And so many of my clients have come back and said, actually, that's not what I thought it would be. And they look so much better than, the process that you've gone through, and they've ended up looking so much better. And it's not as kind of, posy as you thought it would be. It's not as cheesy as you kind of assumed that it would be. A lot of clients have come back and said, actually, I would be interested in something like that, because it's just a nice memento to have. It's great to say you've put yourself through the process a little bit more extreme than what you have before, but not an unsustainable level of extreme like a competition or whatever.
Yeah, some clients, man, they don't even want to know about all the poses and stuff. They just want to be somewhat lean, under a bit of light, a little bit of downlighting, whatever, and then they're just holding on to like a bar.
That's it, and that's why we do like
flexing their
exercise
abs.
style. Yeah, like exercise style shoots. There's not a lot of posing. The only thing that we kind of like, you got myself and the photographer kind of directing at the sides, and we're saying, okay, hold this shot. The photographer's trying to get good shots. He's changing the lighting, and then I'm at the side going, oh, okay, well, just a little bit more spinal flexion, tilt your hips back, try and create the look, make it a little bit better, create more of a taper. That's where my bodybuilding experience comes in, because I'm able to kind of manipulate positions. Same with posing. So I'm able to kind of do that and just create a little bit more of an illusion with certain kind of positions and stuff like that. But we keep it exercise based because it's what they're most comfortable doing. And the only thing that we say sometimes is like, no, put a straight face on, keep a straight face. Don't actually make it look like you're working hard. But yeah, other than that, like it's a lot more. And like every single client came back and said, they were like, that's actually a lot more hard work than I thought it would be, because you're holding a pull up in a position for 15 seconds while someone's taking like 20 pictures. And then you've got to do it 3-4 times because he's manipulating lighting. By the end of it, like an hour and a bit session, you're spent. You need food. Like, you know, it doesn't matter how many carbs you've had. You're depleted. It's like you've had a full-blown workout.
It's nice too, because like it's not like you're telling the client, hey, meet me 2 hours away. It's a long drive, like as if it's like a bodybuilding show. It's like, no, we're doing this at the same exact gym.
That's it. Exactly.
We just got a guy coming. He's gonna get the shots, and that's it. And like
yeah, that's it. And I'm fortunate enough to have like 2 of those clients were pretty nearby. Like one client traveled about 2 hours or so, but we all went out and got food afterwards, and it was just a nice experience. It's, you know, it's like that, you know, going out for food with my coach. We all went and got a burger. Like for them, it was well deserved. For me, it probably wasn't as deserved, but you know, I was stood around a lot. I deserved it. So yeah, it's nice.
It's like a mini bodybuilding show. Like you really want to think of it like that. Like
that's it, because they had the post-show meal. You know, it's nice, but it's nice for me to go out with my clients and just liaise a little bit more and just kind of get a better connection with my clients as well. And that's what I like about it. It kind of brings that community aspect. Like you're part of the team. We work together. You're not just doing the things that I tell you to do. We work together as a team. This is the result. We work together as a team with the diet, with the training, with the photo shoot. When we meet up, if we train together, you know, we're going to help each other. I'm going to get just as much value out of training with you as I am giving you value as well. You know,
big time, yeah.
The overall experience.
And usually those are the clients who like the most likely stick around a bit longer too. You know, they see like you're over delivering, you're going above and beyond, and
that's it. And I think other clients take inspiration from that, because they're like, oh, actually, you know, like they're going the extra mile for everyone. And I say to like every client I've got, I'm like, let's train together. We could train together. If you're in the area, if I'm in your area, like I've got clients over in the Middle East. I'm like, if I'm over in the Middle East, I'm going to train with you. But like, it's less likely that I'm going to be over in Qatar or Dubai or whatever. But I'm like, if I'm over there, we're going to make it happen. If you're over here, we'll make it happen. Like it's an open offer to train with any of my clients. And you know, some of them are just like, oh no, I don't know and stuff. But I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it. Like it means I can see you in person. We can go through some things. Like I'm not going to train you. We're just going to chill out together. We're going to just develop more of a relationship as coach and client and a partnership, instead of just being like, no, I don't want to train with you, but I'll tell you what to do all the time.
Got you. So wrapping up soon now, we're like right at the end.
Yeah.
Just want to go into salt quick, man. So for example, like Stan Efferding, Vertical Diet book talks very highly about salt for endurance, hydration purposes, but ultimately for better performance in the gym.
Yeah.
And this is like it's been a time-tested thing. Apparently, might not even be true. But apparently, like, they would give the soldiers like extra salt in the war. Not sure how bro sciencey that is, but as far as myself I'm concerned, good. Okay. I mean, as far as myself and clients, like performance is going way higher.
Yeah.
Since manipulating the salt a bit better. So, yeah. And obviously I got this from my coach too, you know, so I'm not like making it up. But how about you? Like, what do you have to say about salt and like the importance of it, or like, what's your take on the salt thing? Think it's overhyped?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, firstly, tap into like what you said, that, you know, if they were giving salt to the soldiers, obviously there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of fluid lost when they're out on the battlefield. They're not going to be, they're only going to have certain access to water. They've got to maintain a certain level of hydration in general anyway. And that's the thing. They're going to be losing a lot of salt via sweat when they're out on the battlefield and stuff like that. But I mean, just a kind of side thing to that, I'm pretty sure the German soldiers got given crystal meth to stay awake overnight. So, you know, we're not going to go into that, the whole World War II history thing. But yeah, well, like when it comes to salt and sodium in general, like of course, it's going to have its place. You need to have ample levels of sodium in your diet to be able to perform optimally. At the end of the day, even let's take it from a bodybuilding standpoint, not necessarily performance standpoint, because it's not where I'm massively clued up in, but from a bodybuilding standpoint, if you've got too much sodium in your system and not enough potassium, the likeliness is you're not going to get a very good pump. If you've got the right level of sodium and you've got if you've got a good level of sodium, but you've got an equal level of potassium in relation to that sodium potassium pump is going to enable you to actually be able to get the blood flow and achieve a pump. So it's all about the balance between sodium and potassium when it comes to actually being able to, for the blood being able to travel, for you to be able to achieve and sustain a pump, but also with regards to just loss of fluid in the body. That, along with obviously replenishment of electrolytes, is very important. That's why you can talk about intra-workout hydration in general. You know, intra-workout hydration isn't always just as simple. I mean, the simple answer would be, yes, drink water during your workout. But then you can take it to the next level of, okay, well, if I want to be a little bit more optimal, that water needs to have something else. What else am I losing when I'm training? If I'm sweating, what am I losing? I'm losing sodium. I am losing, you know, potassium. I'm using up certain things. I need to replenish everything that I'm losing. So then you can go down the route of, oh, it's not just water. I've got an intra-workout drink that's then it's got an ample amount of sodium, ample amount of potassium. It's got maybe even some carbohydrates in there as well. So when we're talking optimal performance, you need to kind of make sure that you've got at least ample amounts of these things in your system, because if not, one part of your performance is going to slightly flag. And I think that's the main thing, is that, you know, we can't all measure every single marker all the time. We can't be like, oh, okay, well, I feel really low in sodium and this, that, and the other. Sometimes the flags aren't easily as identifiable, but if we're on top of those things, if we're on top of our sodium intake in our diet, then we're going to have substantially better sessions than if we didn't have any salt at all, or if we had too much. We've got to just maintain. It's like I said, everything's got that window. We need to make sure that we're in that window. It's not always about over consuming something unless it's necessary to over consume for whatever reason. But, you know, we've got to maintain that window. And in order to achieve that, we need to kind of know roughly what our intake should be. And again, this could be down to, like you said before, you know, kind of taking note of certain markers and going, okay, well, if I have a meal that's very high in sodium before a session, do I feel better? But do I also feel like I'm dehydrating faster? Do I require more water? Do I end up drinking so much water that I then become bloated, and then I'm not able to maximally perform on certain exercises because I feel bloated? You know, there are so many factors that come into play. But I think, you know, having slightly more sodium prior to a session is definitely going to. It's the same as, I mean, you could compare it. Maybe it's on a slightly different topic, but you can use it as compare it to like creatine, for example. If you have ample amounts of creatine in your system, you're obviously gonna have a great session. It's gonna, you know, you are essentially depleting your stores of creatine. You are using up the creatine that you have available in your system. If you have an intra-workout drink that contains that 5 grams of creatine, you're replenishing it, but you're not necessarily making it readily available to use. You already have it in your system. So whatever is in your system prior to your session, whether it be that sodium, for example, if you're having an intra-workout drink that's got more sodium in it, it's not necessarily going to be as readily available, but you are replenishing it. You do need to kind of maintain a certain level of performance. So yeah, I think it's just all about that element of balance in relation to knowing roughly what your markers should be, knowing roughly how you feel when you have more or less sodium, and just tapering it from there. I think there's an extreme side where you can absolutely, you could be adamant that you've got to have like a piece of bread with some peanut butter and like absolutely cover it with like 10 cracks of salt before your session. I've known guys that have done that, and that's like the extreme level, but it doesn't need to be taken to that extreme. But as long as you know roughly, as long as you know that having something before your session is going to make a substantial difference. It may be the sodium element, it may be the salt, it may be the carbohydrates, it may be your level of hydration at the time. If you've not got ample hydration, if you've not had ample hydration in the hours before your session, what's to say that consuming a shit ton of salt is going to make any difference than, just because last time you consumed loads of salt and your performance was better, but your last session you may have had an extra 2-3 liters of water in that day.
100%.
It's never down to the one thing, but that one thing is gonna work with everything else.
You try to trace the factors and see if you have a bad session, what led to that. Like you said, carbohydrates, it didn't have enough salt, water intake was too low, sleep. Like you're always trying to put all the odds in your favor as much as you can. Yeah, I'm with you 100%, man. And I
think just kind of elaborate slightly, everything is gonna go. The salt is a very small factor. The main factor within that equation is hydration. If you've got the salt in the system, you're not hydrated, it's not going to do shit. Same with anything. If you've not got that low hanging fruit in every situation, whether it's like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit run down today, I'm feeling a little bit fatigued, I'm feeling, I can't get a pump, but I've had loads of carbs. And you're like, yeah, but you're dehydrated as fuck. If you've got nothing to carry those nutrients, those macros, those micros around your system, you're not going to be able to achieve what you're looking to achieve. So the amount of people that kind of completely overlook their hydration, and then they jump to those conclusions of, oh, well, I've had less sodium today, or I've not, my carbohydrate source is slightly different, so I feel like my, or I slept really bad or whatever, so my session's really flagging. It's like, okay, well, you might be way less hydrated than you were last session. Your hydration is the number one thing that you should go to. After that, if you know 100% that you've drank enough and you are hydrated enough and you're not kidding yourself like most people tend to be, then you can then start to add into those little things. You can tap into, okay, well, shit, I've had a lot of sodium and I've not had nearly enough water in relation to that sodium. So I'm going to be dehydrated. I'm going to feel dehydrated. Or I've not had enough sodium. I've had loads of water. I feel really bloated. I'm finding it hard to. I'm cramping up a lot because I've got that. I've almost got too much potassium in relation to sodium in my system. I'm cramping up. Then you've got to use those markers like cramping up or feeling watery, like you're retaining loads of water, or feeling dehydrated. You've got to use those kind of small flags to dictate, kind of have certain effects on performance. But it's all down to hydration at the end of the day. The salt's not going to do anything if you're not hydrated, or if you're overly hydrated, the salt's not going to do anything if there's not enough. So it's all about ratios with those little things.
Yeah, big time. And regarding like the sleep, for instance, like I mentioned with the logbook, a lot of people, they underestimate it, or they overestimate how much sleep they're getting. And I would say it's the same thing with water. People who say I'm getting 3-4 liters, like I've never even seen you with a water bottle.
That's it. And 3 or 4 liters of coffee is not 3 or 4 liters of water. So
like, no, man. and that's gonna impact your pumps in the gym. Like if you feel like you're more flat. Anyways. So yeah, long Q&A, man. We're approaching the 2.5-hour mark, man. Nutrition. Covered a lot of the questions I want to ask for the most part. Some of them were pretty redundant, so I kind of answered my own question. And I pretty much thought from the previous answers, you guys would probably connect the dots anyways. So for the most part, man, Q&A is done. Nutrition edition. Really happy. Next Q&A is one you guys do not want to miss. Talking about gear, which, by the way, when it comes to gear, man, like, don't get me wrong, I know some stuff about it. I know some, like, from watching stuff over the years, having people around me who've took the assisted route and, just local gym goers. And, but at the same time, I don't train assisted lifters, and I have no problem saying that. But at the same time, my man Ryan has tons of skin in the game regarding, the scene in the UK, and he's going to share a lot of gems with us in the next episode, man, as a natural lifter, obviously. But that's definitely an episode you don't want to miss. And like, I feel like there's a lot of taboo going on. Like a lot of people don't really, even in 2023, people still don't talk about it that much. And if they do, it's not from an education standpoint, it's more on the entertainment side, which just makes a lot of teens just want to hop on it even more. And anyways, we're going to go down those rabbit holes in the next episode, man. And do you got anything else, any other words you want to leave, man?
No, I think we've pretty much covered anything. Obviously, I'm looking forward to the next one when we go into a little bit more detail as far as we can kind of go, as the natural kind of with the natural side of things, because as you said, our education on that topic is very limited, but we can only base it on the context we have in the areas that we have, the people that we know, what we've experienced in people we've worked with, people that we've known over the years and stuff like that. But there are definitely some interesting topics that we can tap into with regards to the nutrition side, the PED side, when it comes to those things together, when it comes to how to train, the differences in training between guys that are natural and guys that are on PEDs, certain thresholds, and just the overall response, and the difference with the hormonal response that we get in relation to naturals versus guys that are on the source. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that one.
Yeah, if you guys are not following Ryan on IG, you can post it in the description box. If you're not following him on YouTube, he has the channel as well. Doesn't post that much, but still add it up anyways. And with that being said, man, this won't be the last time you hear from us, man. So see you guys very soon.
See you soon.
Ciao.